Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Three in the Keystone, episode 54. It's a two-man booth tonight. Al Ryan placed on the IL with strep throat, so it's me and Chris Guest, just like the good old days.
That's right. Throwback edition.
And we have a lot for you tonight, but first we got to do our episode dedication. Chris, I have two different options. You want to go local or you want to go national here for episode 54?
Uh, well, we're a Philly-based show, so I guess you could go with the local.
All right, well, in that case, it's going to have to be the Brad Lidge
Yeah,
episode.
yeah. I was gonna say. Well, what was your national one? Why not?
Brian Urlacher.
Yeah, Urlacher's a good one. Bobby
Urlacher.
Wagner, you could have said too.
Yeah, but he's not on the level of those other two guys.
Or I just saw the one. How about that Horace Grant?
I saw Horace Grant as an option as well. I didn't think that would resonate as well as the other two guys. But before we get going, I listen. I have to tell you something. We started this podcast over a year ago now, you and I, and we've gained some traction. And I want to thank all the listeners who have, obviously our listenership has grown substantially since the very beginning. And I want to thank all of them for all of that. But my goal coming into this, Chris, was to become the number one sports podcast in the world. And
That's a high level goal.
it's a high level goal. And as much as I enjoy doing that with you, and I hope that it's with you, if I have to move on to another city to get it done, I might just have to do that, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, well, I pick up what you're putting down now. At first, I was like, what are you talking about? But now I get what you're saying.
That guy just continually puts his foot in his mouth.
It's getting kind of old, honestly. Like the whole trolling thing and like the saying things to try to rile up the Twitter's verse or the fan base. It's just kind of getting like, just win, man. Like, just
But he's
win.
not trolling. He's just saying stuff, and then when it comes back on him, he says he's trolling.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I mean, was like Game 7 a troll job? Was that I mean, like, did you troll us in Game 7?
Yeah, exactly.
Or the fourth quarter of Game 6?
It was cute and funny when you were you were playing great, but when you don't show up in the biggest moments, just win games. Just win us games at the end of the day.
And I look, I've been a supporter of the guy, and it is getting tough at times, but like he's still my guy, and I say this endearingly, like, bro, get it together, man. Like, I mean, I say like I would to a student, like, you need to you need to get it together. You need to get this goal met of yours, which for him is winning a championship. Because guess what? If he has to go somewhere else, dude, I don't really know anymore if he's a championship if he's got the dog in him as a champion. I don't know anymore. That's the worst part about all this. I don't know if he has the dog in him to win a ring. Like Giannis went out and took a title in 21 because he wanted to win, he had to win, he was determined to win, and he did it and he won. Does Embiid have a Giannis run or a Jokic kind of run in him to win a title?
Talent wise, I would think he does.
Sure, talent's not the question. It's the heart.
I don't even know if it's the heart as much as you can break him down mentally.
Well, you're right. I should have said it's the mind. It's definitely the mental game with him. And we've talked about that before throughout the span of the last 53 previous episodes. I feel like at some point it's come up in every one of them. Is what is it going to take to get? I mean, we've had this guy have so many different co-stars, and now at this point, coaches. I'd hate to see the guy become a coach killer, or a teammate. I mean, a guy that players don't want to play with because they can't win. And if that's the case, he's definitely, I'm a Sixer fan through and through, and the team is always more important in my eyes than the player, and always will be. And if that's the case, then we got to move on and figure out the next era of Sixers basketball, because this is wasting everybody's time.
Yeah, and the city is starting to lose patience with the shtick. And this year's going to be big. Again, this is third coach in not 3 years, third coach for him. And it's time for him to step up and take that next step as a franchise NBA cornerstone. And for those of you guys who weren't in the news today, this was basically Joel Embiid with a interview with who was doing the interview.
I forget.
It was oh my god.
Was it the
LeBron's
ring?
who's LeBron's boy?
Oh, Maverick?
Maverick Carter. Yeah, it was with Maverick Carter.
Yeah.
And basically Embiid stated, his goal is to win a championship, hopefully in Philadelphia, but if it has to be elsewhere, so be it. Um, and then
And I would say this to his defense too. The city also needs to lighten up. Like, I mean, there's been people on, in my travels today that, listening to sports talk radio who are like, well, we need to trade him then. He doesn't want to be here. He never said he didn't want to be here. What he's saying is that he wants to win a title. He understands that it may or may not happen here. And I think what he's trying to say is he's comfortable with that. I know we'd all love everybody to be Bryce Harper and say that our city's the best city in the world and they don't want to ever leave and they want to live here and die here and be buried here and the whole thing. But I don't, the trade talk for him and like the get him out of town, he doesn't want to be here talk. I don't think that's accurate with him, right? At least not at the moment right now.
But the issue is not the words that he said. I think the city would have much less of an issue with it if he had gone out against Boston and averaged 35 and 15. The issue is the reason we're not winning championships is because you aren't doing good enough a job. So stop pointing it out and saying, well, maybe it's got to be elsewhere when all the fingers need to be pointed at you.
Well, he can't do it himself, Seltzer.
I know. Listen, we've talked enough Sixers over the last few weeks. We're changing gears. I just thought that was needed to be brought up, at least in the beginning of this episode. But for segment 1 tonight, we're basically at the midway point of the Philadelphia Phillies season. We are going to do a trade deadline episode next week as we prepare for what should be a active trade deadline for our Phillies. But it's time to give out some mid-season grades, Chris. The Phillies currently sit at 51 and 42. So we are, I guess, 93 games in the season, a little bit past the halfway point. They are a half of game out of the wild card. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Half a game out of the wild card behind Arizona.
It's a bundle in there. It's going to be interesting second half. About 4 teams out there fighting for these spots, and we're really within like a game of each other. So,
and they just came off a good series against San Diego, winning 3 out of 4. You know what? I've watched a decent amount of the Phillies this year, but I really locked in on this past series. That was a fun weekend series.
And it was. And I want to say real quick, did you hear the story? Speaking of superstars who don't really get it, did you hear the story about Manny Machado?
No.
So the story came out. I think it was Saturday's. What was the game? Was it Saturday afternoon when he hit that bomb in the upper deck in left field?
I believe
he had a home. He had
Saturday
a
or Sunday.
I think it was Saturday's doubleheader. I think it was the first game. He had a home run, I believe. And long story short, apparently it was his 300th career home run, and it was a mother there with her 2 young kids, and baseball fans. They play on baseball teams, whatever, locally. And they got approached by the Phillies guest services because Manny wanted the ball back. So of course they're like, okay, well, we're not looking for a bunch of stuff, whatever.
So it was his 300th homer.
Okay, so yeah, so the kids just wanted like a signed ball. The mom wanted it authenticated, and they just wanted a picture with Manny, just a meet and greet, real quick picture with him, this and that. He refused it.
Really, I didn't.
He wouldn't do it. He came back. I mean, I'm sorry. They asked him again because the mom was like, well, my kids are on like the U8 baseball team locally. They love baseball. They love Manny. He's one of their favorite players, this and that. And they went back, and what they got back was 2 signed autograph balls. I think they might have given him like a bat or something like that. And they called it a day, and he would not come out. He didn't want to. My thing is this: if it was 10:30 at night, he played a long, hard game. They lost the game. He didn't feel like coming out the locker room. He wanted to just go back to the hotel. That's one thing. I could give him some leeway. He was at the stadium anyway. It was game 1 of a doubleheader. And look, I get it. Chris love the kids. Everybody don't love the kids like Chris love the kids. All right. But they're still kids, man. And they're still fans. And I think the least he could have done, the least anybody can do, is literally come out, smile, shake a hand, take a picture, and say, good luck, thanks for coming out, and go back to your dugout. or your locker room. That really pissed me off. Anytime somebody shuns kids, these athletes especially, it's just not a good look, man. And for me, I wanted to ask you, if that was you or your child, I'm taking the ball back and I'm saying he ain't getting the ball.
I would do the same thing.
I'm not like, they can't keep me at the stadium. I have the ball in my possession. I'm leaving. And I'll just
Right.
handle it however I want to handle it.
Right. And you need to be more aware of the fact that, again, we live in a social media world where these stories are going to get out.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's just not a good look for your reputation. And again, maybe again, Phillies beat the Padres in the NLCS. Maybe he's tired of the Philadelphia fans getting on him. He's getting, yelled at all the game. And again, that's not these kids doing that, but maybe that's the shtick or the excuse that he wants to throw out there.
Right.
I'm sure it's something along those lines. But again, it's just a simple taking a picture. It's not that big of a deal.
And not only that, I look at sports like it's entertainment. I look at it like I look at wrestling. If I go out there and I boo Brock Lesnar, it doesn't mean I don't like Brock Lesnar. Really, like if I saw him on Broad Street, I'm not going to say you suck, Brock. You're this and that. Like I'm going to still be like, whoa, that's Brock Lesnar. That's awesome. What's up? This and that. And the same thing with these sports guys. Like, am I a big fan of Manny Machado? No, but I respect him, and I think he's a great ball player. And I would still love to have memorabilia of his. But at the same time, like when you cross that barrier of just being disrespectful as a human being, I don't have time for that, man.
Couldn't agree more. But let's get into, as my dogs run across the basement like wild children. Let's get into some of these grades. So let's go through the infield. Let's start behind the dish. Both you and I, both one of our favorite players on the team,
Jesus.
JT Realmuto. Where are you at on JT's letter grade for the first half of the season?
I wish I could pull up the statistics and have all the, you know, sites and everything at my disposal, like the statisticians do, because I would love to know his batting average in the clutch.
Dude, let me give you a thing. I wish I had this too. I saw a tweet last week from a valid baseball site. It had the least clutch players in baseball, and I believe JT Realmuto was about eighth or ninth on that list.
He's terrible. Like he is such a buzzkill. Every time it feels like they have like first and second, one out. Guy on second, nobody out. Guy on third that needs to get knocked in. All he strikes out or just like hits a ground out weak
Ground
to
out to short.
shortstop. Yeah,
Ground out to short.
every
Oh,
time. It's so I'm looking at his stats now. He's batting 246. He's got 80 strikeouts and 297 at bats. So he's probably on pace for 160 some odd strikeouts this year. 11 home runs. So right now he's on pace for 22 and
less than that
70.
because we're past halfway.
Well, they have him at 82 games played, so I'm just extrapolating. I mean, I know it's he sat some or whatever, but around 20 and close to 80 home runs and 80 RBIs. It's going to look okay on paper at the end of the year with his home runs and his RBIs. He's got 21 doubles, but he just is, like I said, it just seems he's always just never in. We're never in a situation where we have faith in Real Muto when he comes up. And I'll be honest, I think his defense this year has been a little overrated.
It has. He can still throw.
Oh, he's an elite thrower behind the plate, elite thrower. But as far as like he's got some pass balls this year that were just like, what are you doing?
He
Like,
had a
I don't know
bad one
if it's
yesterday.
focus or getting crossed up with certain pitchers, but it's stuff that we haven't really seen before. So I don't know if he's distracted by anything or something, whatever, this season. But bro ain't getting it done for me. I give him like a, honestly, I mean, I'd give him like a. I hate watching him play right now, man. I give him like a C minus, man. I'll be honest with you.
So we're on the same page. I have C minus as mine as well.
Okay.
Again, 246, only a 304 on base. One of the least clutch players statistically in the MLB. That's not an exaggeration. Listen, he's 32 years old. He's logged a lot of miles behind the plate.
And that's what I was thinking too. Is it getting to where he's on a decline?
I absolutely think he's on a decline. I'm not a fan of paying catchers. I never have been unless you have an elite one. And maybe he was that a few years ago. I've always thought he's a little bit overrated. But again, he's very good defensively.
I mean, Alfaro could have gave you this.
No. Alfaro's not going to give you the defense. Alfaro's bouncing around the league. Stop. That's not right.
I'm saying as far as like 246, Alfaro came back 246.
Alfaro,
Alfaro, let's not forget, Alfaro had an elite cannon back there too. Now,
yeah, but he
he wasn't
couldn't
as good of an.
catch.
I would say he wasn't a good defensive
And
catcher, but he had an arm as far as guys off.
you're just counting this year. You're not counting the past 5 years where JT's been substantially better than what he's been this year. That's not a fair comparison at all. That trade was one of the better trades in Phillies history. I looked up. It was Jorge Alfaro, Sixto Sanchez, whose arm has basically fallen off.
Yeah, where is he? Is he pitching at least in the minors, or is he?
I think he just got cleared to pitch again like a month ago. I haven't heard anything since.
I mean, he's potentially elite though, man. Like, I mean, I hope that
he's had like 4 arm surgeries since they traded.
I know.
And then that Will Stewart, whoever that is.
I don't know who that is.
I don't know. But we're both on the same page. C- for JT Realmuto in the first half of the season. Let's go over to first base. Let's go to Alec Boehm. I'll start on this one. Really the opposite of JT Realmuto for me. When he comes to the plate in a big spot, I have a lot of faith in Alec Boehm for whatever reason. He's at 282 for the season.
Well, that's your reason right there. I just said that's
336 on base, 425 slugging.
Yeah.
He's made the transition to first base pretty seamlessly, considering the fact that, it wasn't like he had a whole offseason to prepare. This was kind of thrown in his lap at the last minute when Hoskins goes down, pretty much the last week of spring training. Would we like there to be a little more power? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've talked about,
but he is on pace for more power numbers than he has in his career this year, though.
Yeah, but you're still looking for more than what
you're
getting from him at a corner.
No, I agreed. Yeah,
but to your point, Chris, like the home run numbers aren't there, but his slugging has gone up from 398 to 425. So you're getting more extra base hits out of him. Again, is not exactly where we need him to be, but he leads the team in RBIs. He's been flexible from first base to third base. I'm giving him a B+.
I actually was going to give him an A-. I think that he's become one of my favorite guys on this team, actually. Let me ask you this. Would you expect if you were the GM of a baseball team, do you look for more power at the first base position or third base?
Either or, like the corners are traditionally, because again, the guys you're putting at the corners are those big guys who don't move as well, and you're expecting just traditionally it's a more power position. When you think shortstop, second base, center field, you're thinking speed, you're thinking smaller guys, more agile guys that you're putting in the middle where naturally there's just not a lot of power there. So that's why I think when you think third base, left field, first base, catcher, you're thinking more of those bigger guys, which necessarily, adds to the power department.
Yeah, because he's gonna get close to 20 homers. He's gonna get over. He's on pace at least to get over 100 RBIs. And how I feel about Rhys Hoskins. I'm not a big Rhys Hoskins fan. I don't miss him now. I am totally fine with not seeing him again in the Phillies uniform, to be honest with you. So my point is, do you make a move to get a third baseman and keep Boehm as your first baseman, especially with his length and his size? It is conducive to being a successful first baseman. I just been wondering about that recently. Like, do you let Hoskins walk after this year, have Boehm as your first baseman, and either at the deadline trade for or in the offseason sign a big name third baseman to complete your infield for the next, at least 5+ years?
We'll talk more about that next week, but I think the problem with that, Chris, is they want Bryce to be able to play first base because they want to get Schwarber out of left field.
Do you think that that's the long-term move, though, or just for this year? Like, do you think they want to convert him into a first baseman long-term? I don't think so.
I don't think it's off the table.
Really? See, I've never been thinking of it like that. I've always been thinking of it as a short-term fix, just so until his arm is ready to be able to, he's got a cannon in right field. He plays a nice right field.
Does he have a cannon anymore, though? We don't know.
Well, that's true. I mean, but traditionally speaking, when you have that procedure, your arm comes back a little bit stronger. So I don't know. I want to keep him in the outfield, honestly. If it was my choice, I would keep him in right field and have him as first base just for the rest of the season. But You definitely got to get Schwarber out of the outfield. I mean, I'll be honest, I wouldn't be opposed to having Castellanos move to left field and doing some swapping around out there to do what we have to do to get Schwarber as a DH.
Maybe it's something in left field because Juan Soto didn't look pretty comfortable out there this whole weekend either.
Well, he's never been he's another one. He's got a great arm, but he's not really the best fielder either.
Right.
But you deal with it because of his bat, and just like how they do with Schwarber because of his pop and his bat. But I mean, I don't know. Castellanos is known to not be a good fielder too, but he's been good ever since the playoffs. He's been all right.
Yeah, no, he's been okay, and that's why maybe you're a little hesitant to move him because he seems to be getting comfortable out there in right
Yeah.
field. Let's go to second base though. We got a little off track there. Bryson Stott, you can start with this one.
Stott's my guy. That's my favorite guy on the team. He's got an A for me. He's batting over 300. A little bit more pop would be nice from, he's got 8 home runs. I'd like to see that around. I mean, as long as if he can get to 20 this year, that'd be awesome. I don't know if he will, but I'd like to see him going forward be regular in the 20 plus range for home runs. I've already been on record as saying I think he could be a potential 300 hitter. I think he is the Chase Utley of this team, this generation. I think I can definitely see that for him. Not just with his popularity, but also how he plays on the field, his production. He plays hard. He's got grit. Love watching him play. I have total faith in him against lefties or righties when he's at the plate. I love the guy. I give him an A.
I have him as an A as well. So we've been on the same page for all three here. Look, 300 average, 340 on base, 430 slugging. His power's up considerably as far as slugging percentage to where he was last year. Again, similar to Bohm, I trust him to put the bat on the ball. Future batting champ. I've said that many times on this podcast. I really believe he'll win a batting title at some point in his career. My only plea is, will Rob Thompson please play him against left-handed pitching? Just leave the guy in the lineup. He needs to play every day. I don't need to see Josh Harrison or Mundo Sosa anymore.
Wow.
Let the guy play.
And also, I get, and it sucks because I don't really have leverage in this argument because they win with Schwarber for whatever reason as a leadoff hitter. But I've been saying it since the playoffs last year ended. Stott is your leadoff hitter. He's a 300 guy. He's hitting 303 right now. He's going to be a 300 guy. I think he's now second or third in the league in hits with two strikes. He's got the makings of a leadoff hitter. He can steal a bag. He got 16 bases. So you get some speed there. Only been caught once. I think he's your leadoff guy long term. I don't know how long this Schwarber thing is going to last. This whole stick of having him as the leadoff hitter, I hate it, but I understand it at this point. But I mean, yeah, defensively too, the guy's he's got a good glove, the whole thing. The guys love him. He's good in the locker room. I'm very happy with Bryson Stott.
Me too. So we're there with an A. Let's move over to the other middle infield position, which has been a little bit of an issue with Trey Turner over at shortstop, the big offseason acquisition. 249 average, at 301 on base, 386 slugging. His defense has also left a little bit to be desired, not having a great year defensively, although that's not what they signed him for. Just doesn't seem to be comfortable. He's swinging at pitches that are out of the zone. His slugging is down almost 100 points from where it was last year. Listen, I don't mean to be harsh. I have a D+ for Trey Turner. He's been extremely disappointing. I mean, you have to ride it out now, but God, you got to hope this isn't the guy we signed for the next 13 years.
No, I agree. And we're staying around the same area here. I have him as a C, and that's just because he's gotten a little bit better recently. And I think he's going to be good for us in the second half. I do. But right now, I mean, he's on pace for 200 strikeouts.
What's his career high before that?
What's that?
What was his career high before that?
I'd have to look it up. I'm not really sure, but I don't think he's ever struck out 200 times. Say that 5 times fast. And he's only got 27 walks. I was kind of surprised by that. I thought this guy was going to come in, be bona fide leadoff hitter for us, and do what he has done in other places at the top of the order. And he he's like you said, he swings at a lot of bad balls, and I don't ever remember him doing that previously. I don't know if it's he's put pressure on himself to be great off the like right away, but there is something to say about these guys in their first year here. Bryce didn't have a great year first year here. Obviously, we know Nick didn't have a great first year here last year. Bohms had issues when he first started, even though he was a rookie, it was a little bit different. But there's been guys that haven't really gotten off to a great start in their first year here when they've had expectations. So maybe that's a little bit coming into play. He is well, I think he's 30 now, right?
He's 30.
So that worries me a little bit that he may have already peaked and now it's going to be kind of downhill. If it's downhill, then this becomes one of the worst contracts in baseball. And like I said, I believe in him. I'm still on board. I believe he'll turn it around, not just the second half, but even going forward. I think he'll be fine. But it has been a little bit. It's been interesting. It's been making me a little uneasy this first half of the season with him.
Yeah, to your point, he has 100 strikeouts already. His career high in the season is 132. So he will blow past that at some point.
But he does have 96 hits, which is what, third, I think, on the team. So yeah. That's kind of where I give him a C, because he's got 19 doubles, he's got 21 stolen bases, hasn't gotten caught stealing yet, although he's been picked off a couple of times when stupid, just boneheaded decisions over at first base. But when he steals, he hasn't gotten caught yet. And, his glove has been dependable for the most part. He has had, again, some plays where it looks like it's lack of focus. And I really think the guy's probably put some pressure on himself. And this is what has become of it.
I mean, I hear you. We just have to hope that he turns it around at some point, because they're going to need his bat to come alive in the second half.
Yes, they are.
Absolutely. Let's move to the outfield. And let's go to left field. Let's go to Schwarber. We already touched on him a little bit, and I'll let you start with Schwarber.
Again, I've already mentioned, you guys know I'm not a Schwarber guy. He's got great pop in his bat, but I get that. But I give him a C, and that's because of the home runs. I feel like this guy's up at the plate and he's a home run or a strikeout. It's all or nothing. He's got 123 strikeouts already and in 349 at-bats. So he's striking out a third of his at-bats.
He leads the league. He leads the league in strikeouts.
Yeah, leads the league. But he does have 60 walks. His RBIs are creeping up a little bit now. He had a good weekend and a good little stretch he's had. So he's up to 56 RBIs with his 25 homers. But man, and of course his defense is just not even worth discussing. It's awful.
It actually is worth discussing because it's that bad.
Well, he might be the worst outfielder in baseball.
He is a noodle for it all.
He's a noodle. He has no speed. He looks like a softball player at the plate and in the field. That's how he always looks to me. I would love to see him thrive in the middle of the order at like 5 or 6, but I know that's not going to happen because for whatever reason, he as well as the team play better when he's at the top of the order. So we got to keep him there.
Yeah, I don't know.
For the time being. At some point, eventually, it's going to be like, dude, I don't care. You got to figure it out. I'm not having this guy leadoff batting 189.
Yeah, I mean, the famous saying is correlation doesn't necessarily equal causation. So I don't know if they're winning because he's in the leadoff spot or just happens to be that way. And we're close here. I have a C+ for Schwarber. At the end of the day, we can nitpick all we want on his defense. We can nitpick his average. We can nitpick the strikeouts. The reason he was brought here was to hit the ball out of the ballpark. And he's come through. You mentioned very clearly that people struggle in their first year. He hit almost 50 homers last year.
Yeah, he led the league. I believe he led the league in home runs last year.
He's 6th in Major League Baseball in homers now. Yeah. He's going to hit 40+ again. Does he leave a lot to be desired? Absolutely. But they brought him here to hit homers. That's what he's done. He's also been, from Again, we're not in there, but from what everything says, he's a big presence in
Oh,
that
they love him in the
house.
yeah.
So again, that's things that he brings to the table. So I can't go lower than a C plus because of those reasons. He is what he is. That's the famous guy Pete Devone said. He is what he
He
is.
is what he is. Yeah. Well, and Ben Simmons said it. I am who I am. It is what it is. And that's pretty much where we're at with Kyle Schwarber. Look,
Absolutely.
and he seems like an awesome dude. I'd have a beer with the guy. I don't have any ill will towards him at all. I like the dude. I just think on the field, I'm just not a fan. I just don't like baseball players who play like that, when you can't, like, if it's just a one trick pony out there hitting home runs, unless you're hitting 60 home runs and 130 RBIs, 189 to me is it's just not going to cut. And when you have a lefty pitching out there, forget it.
But yet he plays every day and
Yeah,
stops
forget it.
sitting against left-handed pitching.
And he can't hit lefties, and you have him at the leadoff spot. It's one out off the bat.
He did hit a big sac fly off a lefty to end the game yesterday.
He
Though. We
did.
gotta give
He
him,
did. Yeah, like I said, he had a good weekend this weekend. I'll give him that. He had a good weekend. He won the game Saturday night. He had a big hit, big home run. But long term, man, it's you can't. I can't have him up there, man, with 189. I can't do it. And no stolen bases. And then you got a guy that's batting second who can run around the bases like a horse. And he's slowed because he's got Schwarber in front of him. That's not ideal either.
Absolutely. All right, let's jump over to center field. Let's go to Brandon Marsh. He's hitting 280, 357 on base, 459 slugging. Look, he's been solid at the bottom of the order. He was a guy that I was very hesitant on when they traded for him because he didn't hit in LA. I didn't know how good he was, a highly touted prospect that hadn't really panned out. But since he's come over here, he's been good. He hit 288 when he came over last year. He's at 280 this year. He plays a very nice center field.
Really good. Yeah.
I do think he's probably a lunatic from everything I see, like off the field and in the dugout. I think he's a little crazy, but I think they love him. He's like that crazy
We
uncle
love it.
who's in the
Philly loves
corner,
that.
who's a little loony. That's what he
Yeah.
is. I'm gonna give him a B. I think that he's been good.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go that high, but I always said since we got him, I thought he could be potentially the next Jason Worth, but I think I was a little bit high with those expectations. I don't think he'll reach that, but he's a nice player. What I find with Marsh, I think, is he's streaky. I
Yeah.
mean, he'll have a streak where he's like 3 for 20 something, and then he'll go like 10 for 25. But his defense is always there. He's very solid in the outfield, like you said. He's one of those guys, especially in center, who just follows the ball well. Looks like it's easy for him, which is great. But I would give him right now, I would probably say a B minus, just because I don't feel comfortable playing him against lefties, so I can't play him every day. But when he plays, he typically plays well. You don't really have games where you're like, well, Marsh blew the game for us, or he messed up, or because of Marsh we had to. You don't really have that. So he does well for the most part when he plays, but his streakiness at the plate's tough to deal with sometimes, and I can't trust him against lefties, so I can't play him full time. So for
He's
that, I got to
another
give
guy.
a few minutes.
He's another guy that when he comes to the plate in a big spot, I'm comfortable with for whatever reason, though. I just
Well,
feel like he hits big hits.
he did well in the playoffs and things like he's another guy. He's a locker room dude. They love him,
Yeah, yeah.
and the city loves him. The locker room, the guys love him. So he's definitely a glue piece right now for this squad. So hey, I'm all on board. And he's batting 280, so he's all right. Striking out a little bit more than I'd like. But hey,
He's shown the willingness to switch over to a corner outfield position, despite being a extremely good center fielder. With Rojas coming up, also with Pache playing a little bit more before he got hurt. So he's shown that willingness to be a team player in that regard as well.
let me say this too, real quick about Rojas. I like this kid. I don't know. I think he's out there to be showcased. I don't think there's any chance for keeping him. I think that this is a strategic move to go from a double-A jump all the way to the majors. But he's responded very well. And I'm a believer, like, hey, if you want to showcase a guy, that's one thing. But if he gets here, it's like he plays well. Why not? Can you find somewhere to put the dude? Maybe you keep him at this point. I don't know, but we don't know what he's being showcased for either, or who he's being showcased for.
I think he ends up getting dealt, and I mean you got to look at it as we went into I won't say the trade deadline last year without having a center fielder, and now it's like we almost have three with Marsh,
Yeah.
Pache, and Rojas. I like Pache more than any of those guys. He just can't seem to stay on the field.
Well, and that's what I'd say next. Pache is he's shown me a little bit something this year too. I think Rojas. I don't know. I want to say he projects better long term than Christian does, but I don't know. Maybe not. But either way, they're not going to trade Pache because he's hurt and he's on the injured list right now. But I don't think the fact that they got him through the trade earlier this year, I don't think they're going to move him. But Rojas is the guy they would probably move in a deal. And at least the thing is, if we do move him, you got guys like Pache, you got guys like Marsh, you got guys like whoever's going to come in here potentially that can play that position. You're not going to you probably won't miss him. You also have Justin Crawford down the pipeline a couple years away, which is going to be important to have a space for him available. I think he's going to be a really good player also. So he's a little bit expendable, but I think he can play though, man. I think he's all right.
I mean, he definitely go get it, and his numbers in Double A were solid. I wasn't thrilled with his stance at the plate. I didn't think he could generate a lot of power, but we'll see. It's hard to judge a guy after four games. But
yeah, and
the tools are there.
He's a
the tools
speedster
are
guy
there.
too, more so than a pop guy.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. All right, two more regulars, then we'll get to the pitching side of it. Let's go with your boy Nicky Bats. Where you got?
Got to give Nick an A.
Ooh, that's
You got it. I mean, hey,
we're gonna differ a little bit.
Yeah, I give it that. He's starting to come down to earth a little bit. Hopefully, it's just a little bit of a patch here. And hopefully, he gets back on track. But he's down to 291. He was up as high as what, like 312, I think, at one point.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's been good for him, and he's been good. Like we said earlier, he's been good in the field too. He's turning into the guy we thought we were getting, which is important. That's the main thing. I'll take 290. I'll take 280 from him. But if he can give me 25 and 100 RBIs at the plate, and 30 plus doubles, I'm okay with that.
So I have him at a B.
He's on pace to get.
I have him as a B. He's obviously been better than he was last year. I still see flashes of that guy, especially recently, and it worries me to death that guy's going to come back. My issue with him is I want more power. He's probably on pace for about 20 homers this year. I need him to be closer to 27 or 28. I think he had 30 plus 2 years ago before we got him. I just need a little bit more pop from Nicky. Again, he's been good. He's our all-star hitter this year. I have him at a B. I just need a little more pop, and I need him to build the confidence back in me that he's the hitter that we signed and not the guy that I saw last year.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm still nervous.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's we're kind of tepid with him and seeing is this the real Nick or is it? But historically speaking, last year it looks like that was the anomaly. That was the outlier, and we'll see how he finishes this year if he finishes strong. But I think this is the normal Nick Castellanos.
All right. We're going to find out. Again, when he goes 3 for 20, you mentioned Marsh goes through those streaks. I'm like, is this ever going to end? That's how I feel.
And also being Philly dudes, like we want to see that passion. And when he's struggling, it looks like he's just like, oh, well, all right. And I think that rubs some people the wrong way too, as far as, just the visuals. Like you look at like the eye test when he's not doing well, it's like, it looks like he could just take it or leave it. He's not like Harper where he's stomping back to the dugout and slams the bat and you just know he's pissed and he wants to do better. And Nick, I'm sure, and obviously he does want to do better, but you don't see that. And I think some people just makes him a little bit nervous and sketchy towards him too.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to the last hitter. Let's go Bryce Harper. Hitting 300, 395 on base, 426 slugging. Obviously, the power has been a major issue with Bryce. However, I'm going to give him a B minus
really
this year. Yeah, because listen, I'm going to give him bonus points for coming back early at the end of the day. We didn't expect him to be back until right around this time. And for that reason, I'm going to give him a little bit of a bump up. The power obviously hasn't been there. The clutch hitting hasn't been there. Hitting off of lefties haven't been there. And obviously, he's also clogging up a spot in your lineup that you'd much rather give to Schwarber in regards to the DH role. So there's been some negatives in regards to him coming back. But listen, he's a Philly dude through and through, and I got to show my respect for him coming back as early as he did. So for those reasons, I'm going to give him a B minus. When theoretically, I think that his performance is probably more around a C or a C minus. We did see some flashes this weekend. I thought his swing looked a lot better. He wasn't rolling balls over. So hopefully it is a sign of things to come. But that guy has to get it together if this team wants to have any sort of run in the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, so in 126 less at bats, he's got more hits than Schwarber does.
I
He's
mean,
got
he's
67
gotten
hits.
hits. It just doesn't seem like
No,
he gets
I
the big
know.
spots.
And listen, he's our guy. He has an A minus for me. This guy
Oh
came
wow.
back from Tommy John in what, 4.5, 5 months, to give you anything. I mean, he's not out here getting batting 190 and looks like a mess, and like I think he came back a little early. So I give him credit for the heart and the passion of just doing whatever he can to get back. But I think that's where the power is.
Surely.
I think he's just not 100%. With that being said, he's still hitting 300. He still has, he's already got, I mean, he's got 16 doubles in a little over a third of a season if you extrapolate it. That's pretty substantial. And his leadership, that hasn't dwindled at all. Obviously, he's frustrated in himself, but he hasn't taken that out on from all accounts, hasn't taken that out on teammates or anything, the media or anything like that. But just on the field wise, man, and he's got 26 RBIs, which again, his home runs and RBIs you like to have a little bit higher. But due to his circumstance, I'll be honest, I'm giving him a pass this whole season because what
He's
he's
earned it.
done has been historic. I mean, coming back that early from that surgery is historic. And he's going to, I mean, we were talking about all-star break at best this year for him, and he came back by what, Mother's Day? A little bit
Yeah,
before that, maybe.
it's
Um,
it was impressive how early he came back.
so anything we get from him, in my opinion, this year is icing on the cake. And he's another one. He's going to have a big second half. I feel like he's going to get healthier as the season goes on. He's going to get more confidence as the season goes on. Sometimes, just like in basketball, sometimes when you're in a bad slump, you just need to see a ball go in the hoop once, and you can get out of a slump. Seeing the ball go over the fence the other night for him might do him wonders.
And he had a big hit yesterday off Hader to extend the game.
Yeah, yes, he did. So I'm still giving him an A minus right now. But I mean, honestly, it's a pass for me anyway this year because of what he's done for this organization. And he's been
I
productive when he's out there.
I agree, and listen, he's still been good. It's just the power hasn't been there. All right, let's jump into pitching. For time's sake, we're not going to do each individual pitcher, but let's do a grade for the starting rotation and a grade for the bullpen. Why don't you start us off with the rotation?
So of late, the rotation has been pretty solid. I know they had a great span in June and carried it over into right before the All-Star break. That helped them a lot, I think, as far as my grade is concerned. I would give them right now, I would give them I'd say a B. I'd
All
say
right,
a B.
this is
I
the
would like to see
furthest. This is the furthest we've been apart. So
I'd like to see them get a fifth starter. That's a big deal for me. I like Sanchez a lot, but I in the same way we're nervous about Castellanos, I'm nervous about Sanchez. From the pitching side of it, I think that he's done well against good teams too, which is good to see. It's not just all bad teams where he's doing well against, but you wonder how long that can last. and if he is a flash in the pan or if he's a diamond in the rough. That's what we're trying to figure out, and I think that's what the organization's trying to figure out. I don't want to give up a lot for, they talk about the Stromans of the world that are out there, and a name I keep thinking about, don't know if it'll, play out that way or not, but Flaherty from the Cardinals is someone that I would identify maybe as, if they're looking for another starter by the trade deadline to get into there. But I don't know, man. Like I'm comfortable, in the playoffs, you're not going to have 5 starters. So you have Nola, you have Wheeler, you have Ranger, you have Taiwan.
But here's
Taiwan
my
is
question. Here's my question, and this is why I gave the rotation a C minus.
Yeah, we're way off on that. Where are you? Why? What is your logic behind that?
My logic is this. We've seen stretches or maybe even starts of dominance from the top 4. I'll ignore the 5th starter spot because, like you said, it's kind of been in flux all season. But we've also seen stretches where they all haven't been very good. And Wheeler, I was looking at his stats. He's been more hittable this year. He's almost at a hit per inning. When the last 2 years he was at 0.8 points hits per inning. So he's been a lot more hittable this year. His ERA is over 4. Nola's home run rate is double what it was last year.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
Ranger is what he is. Walker has been fine as a number 4 with a recent hot streak. He's kind of got it back together. But to me, it's like if I'm putting these guys on the mound in a playoff game, I do have trust in Wheeler internally, but I don't think his performance this year has necessitated trusting him as a number 1 in the playoffs as it has in the past few years. So to me, like, I still don't know going into a playoff series how much trust I have in that rotation. I know they've shown flashes, but I just haven't seen the consistency that I've seen in the past or that I want in a playoff rotation.
Yeah, I want to say I think in a playoff spot, those guys would step up. But the World Series, I mean, Nola's really kind of been struggling ever since the NLCS, right? I mean,
he's not that good. He's never been that good. I've always been anti-Nola.
He's had some dominant stretches.
Sure, but he lets you down in big spots.
Normally it's around now though, and he hasn't shown it yet. He's shown it. Who was it? Miami was it not that long ago? One of those recently he had a dominant game. But then he comes back and he is very average at best. And
he got lit up by Miami. It was somebody else.
It was somebody. I can't remember who it was right now, top of my head, but he comes back and then he's very average at best, and it's just it's frustrating. When you see dominance from a guy, even if it's for stretches, it's there. It's like the old Prego great sauce commercials. Prego, it's in there. Like it's in there. You know what I mean? He's got that in him.
Yeah.
But and it might be something to be said about the fact that these guys are 2 things. They're still a little burned out from the innings from last year.
Very possible.
And the pitch clock has not been good to them. And it's not an excuse anymore. That's a personal problem at this point. That is no longer like, well, this isn't going to work out. They need to change. Like, dude, everybody's got to deal with it. There's a lot of players like the pitching numbers overall throughout the league are up.
Yeah, no doubt.
So it's not just Nola and Wheeler. Let's be fair to them. It's not just those 2, but these guys got to figure it out, and not just those 2. Guys around the league. I mean, I'm seeing ERAs for starting pitchers around the league over 4 a lot.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at the top guys now, and I mean the top 5 ERA is Kershaw at 2.55, Blake Snell at 2.71, Alex Cobb at 2.82, and then Stroman and Justin Steele, 2 Cubs at 2.88, 2.96.
And those are good numbers, but historically speaking, that's not typically been like what led a league.
Correct, agreed. And those are nationally, guys. That wasn't the entire MLB. All right, so let's jump into the final aspect here, and I have the bullpen. This is tricky for me. So I gave the bullpen a B+.
All right, I got it A-, so we're right there.
They've been good. They've been very good.
Dude, Kimbrel's been lights out.
Kimbrel's been fantastic. But Are they good enough come playoff time? Exactly the same thing I just talked about starting rotation. Alvarado's been on the DL twice with the same injury.
Yeah.
Dominguez has been on the DL twice now. You're looking at a back end of the rotation or back end of the pen right now of Gregory Soto and Craig Kimbrell. That's not good enough if that's what you're going in with.
I don't know, man. They've been pretty good.
Soto's been okay. His numbers, he's fallen off. Again, like it really depends on the health of Dominguez and Alvarado moving forward in regards to, and we'll just talk more next week when we talk trade deadline of what this team needs. And that to me is the biggest question mark is those two guys. And again, you need as many power arms as you can. And I really like Jeff Hoffman. I think
I do too. I'm glad you brought him up. I
really
like
good. And I
Yeah.
didn't realize the other day I was looking at his stuff. He was a top 10 MLB draft pick.
I didn't know that either.
I mean,
I like him a lot. I'm very comfortable with him on the mound.
Me too. He was very good yesterday. Strom has been decent.
I like him in that role where he's a long reliever. If he has to come in by the fifth or sixth, I that's his wheelhouse. I think for this team.
Marte gives me a heart attack.
See, Marte's grown on me a little bit. I was at first, I was very much like, who is this guy? But he's grown a little bit on me, and so has what's it? Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on him. I think he's been all right. Give me some more.
The lefty Vasquez.
Vasquez, yeah.
He's been
With
okay.
that slider, that's pretty legit.
So look, based on their performance thus far this year, I give them a B plus. But I have question marks moving forward with the injuries.
Do you think who would you rather have, Hader or Alvarado? No injuries, they're just out there, they're normal.
I would take. That's a great question. Alvarado last year, I would take the guy we got in the second half of last year. I would take Alvarado.
Yeah, I think Alvarado might be the best reliever that's not a closer in baseball.
Yeah, I mean Hader's still really good, but Hader is one of those guys. He's only giving you an inning. Alvarado can give you, an inning in 1/3, an inning in 2/3.
Yeah.
But listen, Hader's very good too. I think just the flexibility to be able to pitch more than one inning may give the edge to Alvarado. Again, if we're getting the guy we got at the end of last year.
Yeah, Alvarado's I love him coming in the games. I mean, I trust him in any spot. I think he got burnt at the end of the year because of the innings he had been logging.
Yeah, he was getting
a little bit burned out.
Like a man.
Yeah, I mean, Thompson was putting him in every game. Like every game in the playoffs. So it was a little burned out, I think.
Yeah, and he earned that because of the way he pitched. So
yeah, and he even wanted
because he got optioned down to minor leagues last year.
There was at one point, I forget the exact number, but they had said it in October last year, since he got called up, back up, I should say, when he got sent down, his ERA was like 1 something.
Yeah, it
was devastating. And he's carried over for the most part. He's carried it over this year. So I love the guy.
He was a little shaky when they brought him back from the injury the first time, and clearly that was still bothering him a little bit. With the elbow inflammation. So you got to hope that clears itself up.
And he's a dog. He's a guy that's like, last year he told Thompson, same thing. Like, I'm out here, give me the ball. I'll do what I can. Like, he's not one to just, what was the guy Neshek? He's not like Neshek where he would be like, I'm not playing back-to-back games, bro.
Yeah. Papelbon.
Yeah, him too. Yeah, I'm not playing back-to-back games. He's not that guy. He's like, you need me to throw it. I'm slinging it whenever you need me.
So what'd you have for a final grade for the bullpen?
A-.
A- for bullpen. So we're pretty much on point on almost everything with the exception of the rotation.
And I think right now I believe they're 9th or 10th in the league in ERA as a unit, the bullpen. And they've gotten, as the years going on, I think they've gotten better and better. So a lot of those ERAs were a little bit from the earlier part of the season, especially with guys like Marte and those kind of Dominguez. So I think they've been really good.
It should be an interesting week and a half. Again, we'll preview the trade deadline next week. Any final thoughts before we wrap up the report cards?
I like this team. I do. For the overall, I like this team a lot. I think they might just need 1, maybe 2 more guys in different spots to be a legit team where I can say this team's going to win the World Series. I feel like they still might have a ceiling of where they were last year, which is a great ceiling. I mean, 30 teams would love to have that ceiling. But As far as getting over the hump, I think they're like one or maybe two guys away from that still. So we'll see.
And we'll talk more about that next week. But Chris, I got one more question for you.
What's that?
Are you ready for some football?
Oh, hell yeah.
We are going to start our NFL preview. We're going to jump into the NFC North. So stay tuned for segment 2 when we break down some of the teams in what Chris Berman used to call the Norris. Welcome back to segment 2. Chris, one of our favorite things we did last year was breaking down each division and doing an NFL preview, some over-under picks based on the win totals. So let's start in the NFC North. We're going to do it the same way we did it last year. We will start with the Vegas over-unders with the worst projected team in the division. There's actually a tie, but let's start with the Green Bay Packers.
Okay.
Over-under is 7.5, 8-9 last year. Some quick notes on them. They've made the playoffs 11 of the last 14 seasons. Last year, statistically, they were middle of the road on offense. They were middle of the road on defense. This is the first year since 1991 that Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers will not be the opening day quarterback as they turn it over to Jordan Love, who was the 26th overall pick in 2020 out of Utah State. Give us your thoughts on the Green Bay Packers going into this year.
I got love for Jordan Love, man. I at first I was a little bit shaky on him, and then when he came in against the Eagles last year, he looked really good. And the Eagles, as we know, were a elite team last year, so it wasn't like we were just a half-ass middle of the road team, and he came in and did well. I believe in him. I think that not saying he's going to be Aaron Rodgers, and I'm not saying he's going to be Aaron Rodgers ever, but I think he is going to be potentially a top 10 quarterback in this league.
This year?
I don't know about this year, but in this league, I think he has that potential to be a top 10 guy. If all things are clicking. I mean, Christian Watson is going to have, I guess he'll be the number 1 for them this year.
Yeah.
And he showed a lot of flashes last year in a strong rookie year. We both are big on their backs. AJ Dillon, I know you like him. I like him a lot. I like Aaron Jones' versatility a lot. Running game is strong. O-line is always experienced, top half of the league. And they have 9 guys that are coming back on defense from a top 10 unit last year. They couldn't stop the run. The run stopping was the issue for them. But they got Lucas Van Ness in the draft, the 13th pick. And another year for Devontae Wyatt's development in that defensive line position. I think the Packers are going to actually I think they'll be a decent team, not a great team, but they definitely won't be a bad team.
What do you have? What do you have for the record?
I had the over. I have 9 wins.
Okay.
I had them
So
at
I'm
9
going to
and
go with
8.
the under. So we're going to disagree here. I look offensively, and they're just very young almost everywhere, which worries me a little bit. The quarterback position, all on the receivers. They lost Lazard. I believe they drafted a tight end. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
They drafted a tight end. I
Yeah.
just don't see how a team that didn't really add a ton is kind of leaning on player development, but a team that only won 8 games with Aaron Rodgers last year, and now I'm supposed to take them to win more than that this year. I just don't see that happening. I'm not as bullish on Love as you, although I think he'll be okay. I have him at 6-11 this year, and I think better things may come in the future. But I think they need a year to kind of put it together. And I'll give you my first wild prediction of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if Aaron Jones is traded by the trade deadline.
If they're on pace for 6-11, yeah, maybe. But I don't know. I mean, on that schedule they have, you have 11 losses on that schedule.
So yeah, they do play the NFC South, which is probably one of the worst divisions in the league, but they do play the AFC West as well, which, I think we gave a little too much credit to last year, but still has some decent teams out there. I just think there's a lot to learn early in the year, and they may dig themselves a hole.
Well, we'll see. I mean, they did to bookend around what you were just saying about the tight ends. They did draft Luke Musgrave, Oregon State. second round. And then I think there was another kid that they also drafted a tight end.
Yeah, they're just very young on the outside, and they're
Dude,
young at quarterback.
Dude, they had like 13 draft picks. They drafted like they drafted a kicker. They drafted like all kind of. I mean, Al's boy Sean Clifford got drafted in the fifth
Yeah, I
round.
know. That's why I wanted to do this division before he got on, because I knew that's all he would talk
Oh
about.
yeah, he probably wanted him to start Sean Clifford. He might be a QB controversy in Green Bay.
Then maybe that's why he put Jordan Love in the garbage tier last week.
He's strategic, trying to plant the seeds for his boy.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, that's a lot of draft picks. I don't even know if all those guys are going to get signed. I don't know. But yeah, they only had I think they were -1 last year with their point differential and an 8 wins. So like they had the distraction of dealing with the Rodgers situation. And I think there's something to be said about that. You know, any workplace, when there's distractions, when there's issues with people not wanting to be around or this or that, it's distracting to everybody. And I think that played a part in it. And this is a classic Class C organization. They're not going to be bad. And if they have an off year this year, it's not going to be for long. I have to think that they are going to bounce back, and I think they can take literally a very, very small step forward this year, but long term, I think they can come back to being a threat in the very near future.
Listen, I believed in all those things. I think that they may be a playoff team. Not when we're doing these next year, I may have them in the playoffs. I just think they need a year to put it all together. And I think they may look at this as, like you said, all those draft picks, a development year to see who's got what and who can do what.
And I'll say this too: 9 and 8 for me is also the product of I'm on a total 180 from where I was last year with this division. I'm actually very bullish on this division this year. So that's also a product of the fact that they're going to be in a good division, I think, this season. So that's why I had them at 9. I could easily see them in a different division. I could see them winning 10, 11 games.
All right, Chris is
bullish. I'm bullish on Love and that defense. I think the defense is going to get
Bergman's. You need to borrow Bergman's cheesehead. He's got one of them.
No, I ain't saying all that. I'm not doing that. But I think they'll be all right.
All right, let's move on. I mentioned that there's another team who had the same projected win total, over under 7.5 for those Chicago Bears. The Bears. Bears finished 3-14 last year. They've had one winning season since 2011. Do you know how that season ended?
Yeah, the double doink, right?
The double doink.
Was that 2011?
No. They've only had one winning season since 2011.
I was going to. Okay, I heard you wrong. I was going to say there's no way that was 12 years ago.
Yeah. They had the number 1 pick in this year's draft, but traded out, receiving DJ Moore, 2 seconds, a first, and a swap this past year. Optimism is high in Chicago. Justin Fields showed a bunch of flashes as a playmaker, but he's going to have to work on the ball security and some of his throwing. Like I mentioned, they added DJ Moore, they added Robert Tonyan, they added Devontae Foreman on the offensive side of the ball. They also add Tremaine Edwards and former Eagle TJ Edwards on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah.
My thoughts on the Bears are this. I do like Justin Fields a lot. The hype has grown tremendously for him. And again, I think we may be rushing it just a little bit. I have the Bears under. Again, to go from 3 wins to 8 wins in this league is extremely tough. I don't think they've added enough on the defensive side of the ball. We mentioned Tremaine Edwards, we mentioned TJ Edwards, but they don't really have a pass rush. They don't have a lot going on the D line. They're counting on some younger guys in the secondary. And look, at the end of the day, the head coach is still improving, and the head coach is an extremely important facet for me. You know, we didn't even mention Matt LaFleur on the Green Bay side. So there's just a lot that needs to go right for them to get to 8 wins. And it's a team that I see very similar to the Packers, that it's probably a year or 2 away from being that true contender. So I have them actually with the same record as Green Bay. I have them at 6-11. I think we're going to see some good things from them, but I think we're going to see some inconsistencies along the way.
So I actually have them with the same record as Green Bay as well. I have them at 9 wins this year. Listen, I think that you're 100% right with everything you said. The reason I had them at 9 is because I feel like Fields is going to take the big leap. I think that I've seen enough in the second half of last season to feel like he's going to carry that over into success this year. Also, we know very well that in the NFL, in football in general, you win in the trenches. The Bears went out. They drafted the 10th pick. They drafted Darnell Wright from Tennessee, who was a premier tackle prospect. And then they also stayed in the SEC and got Dexter from Florida for the defensive tackle spot. So they are very well aware of their issues, I think, on those sides of the ball on the lines, and they're addressing it. I think that, not to say those guys are going to be all pros in the first year, I'm not saying that, but I think they'll be better because of those guys. And DJ Moore is going to be huge for them.
I love DJ Moore.
Yeah, I do too. And Darnell Mooney is not a number one receiver in this league, but he is a number two. And I feel like him coming back healthy this year with DJ Moore now in the fold. I'm a Notre Dame guy, Cole Kmet. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh, I thought you were going to talk about your boy Chase.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, as far as like, I don't know. I still don't know what he's going to be. I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know. But Kmet, I think, is a nice player. I think he needs a quarterback, and I think Fields is going to be a lot better for him this year. And I think his production will stand out as a result. But I like this team. I think that with Fields taking that step now, if he doesn't take the step that I think he can take, yeah, they might be 5-6 wins at most. But I think he's going to take a big leap this year.
Any concerns with injuries with him?
Not really. I mean, I know
about those running quarterbacks, man.
Yeah, but he's a sturdy dude. I'm not worried about it. I mean, if he gets banged up a little bit, I could see him, maybe missing a game or two. But I mean, long term, I don't think that's going to be an issue. It's same like with Hurts last year. He's a sturdy guy too. He got banged up, but he bounced back from the 2 games I think it was that he missed. With that extra game in there now, playing 17 games. If you got a quarterback that misses a game or two, it's not the end of the world, especially if it's in good spots, maybe like in the early part of the year. But obviously you don't want to miss games during a playoff run. But I think the Bears are going to surprise some people this year.
No, like you said, I see them very similar to the Packers. I think they're just young, upstart. Just might be 1 year away from being that team that's ready to make that leap.
And I think the fan base would take that.
I think so too. They just want to see improvement.
Yeah, I think they would take that. I think I'm well aware that I'm ahead of, the projections with them, but I just feel like the NFL every year has teams that come out of nowhere. I think the Bears are very much one of those teams that could be one of those squads this year.
I think you're right. You're right that some teams come out of the woodwork for sure. You want to make either of those your best bet?
No.
Okay. So let's move on to the next team ranked in this division. The Minnesota Vikings. Over under is set at 8.5. They were 13-4 last year, Chris. They were my darlings going in when we did these.
You're a huge Viking guy.
Despite a negative point differential last year. They lost a terrible wild card game to the Giants. They were 7th on offense, and they were 31st on defense. The secondary especially was terrible. They did get rid of their defensive coordinator, but they also lost Patrick Peterson, Zadarius Smith, Eric Kendricks, Dalvin Cook was cut. They added Byron Murphy in that secondary. I'm still bullish on that number. 8.5 just seems low to me. I mentioned last week on the pod, I think Kirk Cousins is in my tier of quarterback where if he's on my team, he's going to get me to the playoffs. Again, what happens in the playoffs probably isn't going to end well for me, but he's a good enough quarterback to get me there. They have Justin Jefferson, who is the offensive player of the year. He's just an absolute weapon on the outside. I know you're bullish on KJ Osborne, so am I. As well as they drafted Jordan Addison. They brought in TJ Hawkinson midway through the year last year, and he was very, very good for them. Look, the defense lost some guys, but they were terrible. I don't think it could get much worse on the defensive end. I have faith in Kevin O'Connell. I think he's a good coach. I think the second year of that system. will work well. I do not feel like they are going to lose or feel the loss of Dalvin Cook as much as some people think.
Really?
I don't.
Hmm.
I'm going to lock in the Vikings as my best bet again in the NFC North. I have them at 10-7, going over the number of 8.5 wins, and most likely being a wild card team in the playoffs. So give me the Minnesota Vikings over 8.5 wins, reaching double digits again behind Kirk Cousins, who will be eliminated in the first round.
So Dalvin Cook, I think, will be felt with his absence, and if nothing else, because of the depth now being hit big time. Madison is a nice player. I think he'll get numbers and be productive as a starter. But if he gets hurt, right now they have behind him Ty Chandler, Dwayne McBride, and Kene Wangwu, who I'm not really familiar with any of those guys. I don't. He better not get hurt. That's all I can say, because that is going to make them, the guys like Justin Jefferson are going to be double teamed and bracketed big time down the field if Madison is not a threat from.
I think they'll add somebody with the round of cuts that come through in training camp and or so on and so forth. There's also been rumors that they may bring Cook back on a different contract because he doesn't seem to have a lot of suitors.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that too, as far as maybe just not restructuring at this point, but giving him a different kind of contract that's more team friendly, short and long term, maybe. But yeah, I if I was Cook, I wouldn't go back on principle personally. But a job's a job at the same time. You were right, their defense was awful last year. Big reason why they went home early. But they had 11 one-score games and 8 fourth quarter comebacks last year. That was historic with the one-score wins. That 11 total for the one-score wins. I that's not going to happen again. All right. There's no way that that's going to happen again where they get that lucky 11 times. So I'm looking for that number to get cut in half, which is why I have the under for the Vikings. I have them at the ceiling 8 wins.
We've been different on all three so far.
Yeah, I am not big on them this year. I think Cousins is getting to that age where could start taking a little bit of a decline. We'll see. I think it hurts him as well to not have Cook back there. Again, a lot of this is dependent upon Madison, and I think he has it in him to do well. But if he does not, they're going to be in trouble this year. That defense, you talk about teams going from 3 to 8 wins and how it's tough to do that in the NFL, and I agree with that. But it's also tough to turn a defense that was as bad as Minnesota was last year, 31st ranked in the league overall, to being a decent defense overnight and over, one season based on just the coach change in one season. That's tough. So even if, like I said, those one-score games, those 11 one-score wins, if you cut that in half, you get around that total that I'm at right now with around 8 wins. And that's what I'm going to go with. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team this year.
Yeah, but they did that with the most poor secondary that you could imagine. They got smashed by Daniel Jones in the playoffs. I gotta think they're going to be better than that. I just have to.
Well, that's also why I said about that luck came into play with those wins last year. I mean, 11 of those one-score wins. Everything you just said is the reason why I'm saying what I'm saying, that they're not going to that number is going to be dramatically cut.
Yeah, but even if so you have 11 one-score wins. Even if you instead of having
they had to come back in the fourth quarter 8 times.
Even if they have 11, let's say they have 7 instead of 11. That's 4 less wins. They still win 9 games. They were 13-4 last year. It's not like we're looking at a team that was 9-8 last year. They're 13-4.
Yeah, so that's what I said. If you cut that in half, around 5 wins, that becomes 8.
All right. So you have them at 8 and 9.
Yeah, and that's their ceiling for me. I don't think that they have it in them to get to double digits this year.
So is that your best bet? Are you taking best bet under?
I'm tempted. No.
Okay. All right. So we have
actually, you know what? I'm going to go on a limb. I'm going to do that. I'll take.
All right. So you have your best bet under.
Because everybody's going to take my boys. Everybody's going to take my boys around the country this year for their over pick. So I'm not going to. I'll take the Vikings as my best bet.
All right, so you have the Vikings 8-9 as your best bet. I have the Vikings 10-7 as my best bet. So we are somebody's going to win. Somebody's going to take an L there.
Yeah, we'll
And so
find out.
we've differed on all three, and I think we're going to differ on all four. So let's jump into the next one. The Detroit Lions, America's darling, over under 9.5. They were 9-8 last year, despite starting the year 1-6, fourth in offense. We mentioned how bad the Minnesota Vikings were defensively. They were 31st in the league. The Detroit Lions were 32nd in the league defensively last year. Jared Goff with a resurgent year. It was the first year the Lions have been out of last place in the last 5 years. Dan Campbell enters his third season as the coach. Early round draft pick and running back Jahmyr Gibbs, and they're going to pair him with David Montgomery to completely revamp the backfield from last year, which was Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, who's now with the Eagles. Also, Jameson Williams suspended for 6 games due to gambling. Listen, I'll open it up with this one, Chris. This is going to be, you mentioned it, one of America's teams. There's a lot of hype behind the Detroit Lions. They got the opening week game, Thursday Night Football. They're going to be on national TV.
Yeah, I'm still shocked by that. I love the guys, but I don't know how to put them in that spot.
I don't know either. Defensively, they made some upgrades. They brought in former Eagle C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Cam Sutton, Emmanuel Mosley. To me, can Aiden Hutchinson take the next step? That's going to be the big question. He was very, very good last year, but
Really
can
good.
he turn himself into an elite pass rusher in this league this year? That's going to probably be the difference for me is where we go with this ranking. I have it as an under, and it was very, very difficult for me to do so. I have them at 9-8. I think they're going to have a good year. It's just hard for me to get to double digit wins with the Lions. I struggle to get there as far as a team. I do think they're going to lose. You know, I really like Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's going to be good, but Jamal Williams was a lot of heart and soul on that team. He was a lot of a leader on that squad. I'm not full boat Jared Goff yet. As good as that offense was, I'm not ready to completely commit to him. And I look at that second half of that schedule last year when they made that run, and they didn't really beat anybody that was overly impressive to me. So I think they're going to be good. I think they probably sneak in the playoffs, but I'm just going to hedge my bet and take them at 9-8.
Well, you talk about them not beating anybody overly impressive. The Lions themselves last year were not looked at as a great team by any stretch of the imagination, and they turned it around. You mentioned it earlier. They went 8-2 in their last 10 games. They finished with a plus 26 for the season point differential, which was actually the best in their division. And the reason why they're America's team, and I know you say that kind of semi-jokingly, but they people like me and other NFL fans around the country and the world feel like they want to get behind this team, not just because of the leadership that they have with Coach Campbell and other guys, but they see the organic growth that this team has had over the last few years, and it's starting to pay off. And I think that the big reason for me that I like this team so much is I don't think that second half of the year was a fluke based on how they played and certain games that they won the way they won them. Jared Goff, we had him, I believe, in our third tier last week. Which
No, you screwed that up.
well, but still, some people would think that was high. Jared Goff last year threw for 29 touchdowns, over 4,000 yards, and finished sixth in QBR. He had a really good season, he's playing behind the top 5 O-line in football. That line, that's not changed.
I'll one up you. I think they're probably the second best offensive line in football.
They very well could be. You went behind what, the Eagles?
Yes.
Okay. I'm shocked you didn't say the 49ers like everybody else had. Yeah, I would agree with you with that. They're very good. Amon-Ra St. Brown is very good. Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, could be like the next Alvin Kamara. I just don't think they should have taken him with the 12th pick. I think that they could have got him later. I was not crazy, actually, about the Lions draft this year, to be honest with you. I thought that they had 2 first-round picks, and they took Jahmyr Gibbs early and Jack Campbell early. I inside linebacker. I wasn't really crazy about that. But I like Brian Branch in the second round that they got. So I have them 11 wins. I had them with the over 11 wins. I think that if they win that first game on Thursday night against the Chiefs on September 7th, if they find a way to win in Kansas City, look out. The hype is going to be, the train is going to be packed.
Big time. people will be talking about them as contenders in the NFC if they would make it.
Absolutely.
And look, there's a path where this team is very, very good. I can see it with that defense coming together. Again, I mentioned Hutchinson. He takes that step forward. Goff continues to be as good as he is, and that offensive line gels the six together. And they can very well. I see the path to 11 or 12 wins, but sometimes there's a stigma, dude. And we talked about it last year with the Browns. They're still the Lions, and they're going to find a way to screw it up, and that's what's sticking in my head. So that's why I'm keeping them down just a touch. But I think they're going to be a very good team, and they're going to be fun.
Well, and hey, Detroit might be Detroit Rock City this year. They got SummerSlam in a couple weeks.
I knew.
You know what I'm saying? They got the Lions starting out soon. Like it might be kind of popping over in Detroit.
I guess so. That's not the most fun city in the world to be at. That's for sure. You ever been to Detroit?
I have family that live around there, but I haven't been there myself. No.
Gotcha. Not the most fun place in the world, that's for sure. All right, so let's recap. Chris, we have 4 different picks. We did picks for each team, and they were all different. So you are going over on the Packers, you're going over on the Bears, you're going under on the Vikings, and you're going over on the Lions. Vikings under is your best bet. For me, Packers under, Bears under, Vikings over, best bet. Lions under, completely different. And Al sent in his picks via cell phone.
Oh boy.
I think he let me pull up his win.
He's got what?
He has the same picks I have, except his best bet is the Bears under.
Yeah,
he said the Bears are going to go 0-17, except they're going. And they changed it and said they'll go 2-15. They'll win the 2 games when they start the backup over Justin Fields. So,
well, he also has Sean Clifford as MVP of the NFC North too. I think he said.
I did. That text came in later this afternoon, but you are right about that. Sean Clifford.
Also, I mean, they do have Penn State's finest Jaquan Brisker on the Bears this year too, so he better be careful with that pick because one of his boys is on that team.
Yeah, for sure. But Chris, let's continue in segment 3 to talk more football because this is too fun not to. It's a little early to talk fantasy, but
never early to talk about fantasy. 365.
Exactly. So we talked a little quarterbacks last week. Let's go into some running backs. We're going to do our top 10 fantasy running backs as well as a sleeper and a bust. So if you're getting prepared for your draft, listen to this now. And if your draft's not for a few weeks, archive it and listen to it later. We'll be right back. Welcome back to segment 3. We're going to jump into some fantasy football rankings. So get your pen and papers together. Chris and I are going to do our top 10 running backs as well as a sleeper.
Hold on. Pen and papers.
Get your cell phone out with your notes. You're not a pen and paper guy? I'm a pen and paper guy.
No, listen, it serves its purpose in certain situations. I hear you, but stuff like this, man, I'm on the laptop or the iPad or something, bro. Come on.
You're right. I got a little antiquated there.
Showing our age a little bit, man.
You're right. So how we're going to do this is this. Again, we did this last year, so if you listen to last year, you're familiar with it. We're not giving you the top 10 guys you need to draft in a specific order. We're giving you our top 10 guys at the end of the year, our points prediction in regards to where they're going to be. So again, an example, we're going to have a guy who's ranked 4th, who I'm not saying he needs to be the 4th overall pick in your draft. You might be able to get him in the 2nd or 3rd round. We're just showing how bullish we are on him by saying at the end of the year, we think he's going to finish 4th in total points. So hopefully that makes sense to the listener. It may come full circle as you listen a little bit longer. So how we're going to do this, Chris, we're going to start at number 10. You're going to give me your number 10 guy. And then if I have him ranked, I'll let you know where I have him ranked. And then we'll have a little discussion in regards to where we are on him. So why don't you get the ball rolling with your number 10 running back?
So I've heard a lot of mixed reviews about this guy for this coming year. And as far as the negative side of it, I'm not really getting it, and I'm not really sure why. But I have Joe Mixon as my number 10. And I was very bullish on him, if you remember, last year. And I kind of got he had a decent year, but not as good as I thought he was going to have. Mixon's still only 26. It's not like, for me, running backs, when they get to 28, that's the age where I'm like, okay, let's see. Might be time to move them if you have them on their team, if you have a dynasty team or things like that. So he's still within a prime window for me. And the other thing I look for is for backs is who's behind him. And he's got smooth sailing on that. I mean, that roster right now doesn't really have a lot to show for the running back room other than Joe Mixon right now. So I think Mixon can have a really solid year. Bengals are one of my favorite teams in the year in the league, and I think they're going to be really good again. And Mixon can definitely have a bounce back.
Let me say this. At one point that I wanted to make on the intro, we're in this era of football where we have these running backs by committee
Right.
and how hard it is to find a bell cow. As I went through some of these running backs, I've seen it seems like it's less and less. Those depth charts are not as deep as they used to be.
Listen, something is happening right now in the NFL with the running back position. I don't know what it is, but we obviously have seen that with guys and the lack of money they've been getting, the lack of contracts, the lack of years. This is not a secret as far as, guys, the shelf life of running backs being short. But even this year, even more so, I feel like these teams, these GMs, these owners are just not signing off on running backs at all. And I think it's really interesting to see. We've seen the demise of a position before with the fullbacks in the NFL, and with running quarterbacks being, an added necessity to the skill set at that position. I'm wondering if running backs in general are a dying breed.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly has seemed that way over the last few years, and you could see that especially with the NFL draft. Although there was a couple first rounders this year,
Yeah.
teams it's hard to give that running back a second contract. You're seeing it, specifically Dalvin Cook got a second contract, and Minnesota needed to get out of it as soon as possible. You're seeing it with the Saquon stuff going on now in New York. It's tough to pay these guys as they get older. They're very replaceable.
And I,
As far as Joe Mixon, I got a lot of crap from you last year for keeping him out of the top 10, and you guilt tripped me into saying at the end of the segment that I was wrong and I needed to put him in here. I don't have him in my top 10 again. I drafted him in a couple leagues last year and he burned me. He had 9 touchdowns last year, but 5 were in one game.
yeah.
And from a fantasy perspective, that's all great in that one game, but the rest of the season it
I mean,
leaves a lot to be
he had
desired.
60, he did have 60 receptions.
He did catch some balls, but well, I have more to come on Joe Mixon a little bit later, so I'll save my thoughts. He's not in my top 10.
Okay.
All
But
right,
you
for the
would
number
agree though that he doesn't have, I mean, like as far as guys to target that don't have a lot of people behind him to threaten carries, I mean,
yeah,
Chase
no,
Brown, I don't even know who Chase Brown is.
yeah, no, but I don't think some of these rosters are finalized. Again, we're a little bit early, and I
Well,
think
sure.
will be
Yeah.
cut. Um, but I would
And
honestly say I thought that there were snippets of the season last year where Samaje Perine outplayed him.
well, I don't even have him on this roster right now.
He's not. I
He's
saw
on
him
Denver.
Denver. Yeah, I saw
Yeah.
him somewhere else.
Side,
Um,
side note, Seltzer. I'm just actually looking for reference on our fantasy site for your league, and for the depth charts. And somebody has Chris Evans on their roster.
I guess so. I guess so.
Okay.
And for the reference of the listeners, we're talking half point PPR here.
Yeah. I don't know why now they're on a team, but okay.
So my number 10 is going to be J.K. Dobbins.
Hmm.
Came back from a very serious knee injury at the end of last year and actually was surprisingly really, really good. Ran for 120 yards twice, averaged well over 5 yards per carry. I'm always a little bit bullish on running backs that are in, the read pass option with the quarterbacks that can run because I think it can spring big plays. And having Lamar as that guy, does it steal a touchdown or two down in the red zone? Certainly. But I'm not sure that J.K. Dobbins is going to be getting the ball down there anyway, where it's going to matter. I'm really using him for yards. I'm using him for the big play touchdowns, and he's good enough to catch the football. So I think that all that being said, in a good offense in Baltimore that likes to run the ball, I think J.K. Dobbins is going to end the year as a back end running back one, as long as the knee stays healthy.
I don't know about him catching the football, but I will say the opposite of what I said with Mixon with Dobbins. He actually is on a team that has a good running back room.
in Gus Edwards.
Gus Edwards, and people forget Justice Hill is a nice player too.
Yeah, I drafted him a few years ago. And again, Dobbins hasn't caught a ton of balls in his career, but he did it at Ohio State. He's certainly capable.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, at this level, like I said, he hasn't. If you're looking for a guy in a half point or a point PPR that can get you some reception points, Dobbins, to me, I'm not taking that chance on, especially not with this offense that the Ravens run. Now, if he was on a different team, maybe that would be a little different, but I'm not. I don't think that he's going to be too much of a threat from there. But Dobbins is a nice player. I don't have him in my top 10.
Okay. Let me hear your number 9.
So my number 9, actually my screen just froze, so bear with me 1 second. My number 9 is a guy who definitely can catch the ball at the backfield. That's Jacksonville's Travis Etienne.
Okay.
I am big on Etienne, was big on him since he got drafted. I feel like he is a guy who can be very explosive in the backfield behind Lawrence, or catching the ball at the backfield. He's very explosive. Look, if you're going to be a running back at this point in the game in the NFL, you got to be versatile. You got to be able to catch the ball. Period. He had 35 catches last year. He played all year, so he came back from the injury, played the full season last year, which was good to see. And he had 1,400 plus yards all purpose last year. On a team this year that I think is going to potentially be better and a year older and more experienced, and they're a year older in a good way. They're going to be a year older, gaining that experience as a young team together. So I think he can definitely be a top tier running back from a fantasy perspective this year for the Jaguars. And he's another guy behind him. I mean, they got, right now listed, again, always subject to change, but guys like Tank Bigsby, DeMichael Hasty's on their team, Dearness Johnson. So they got Quadri Allison has gotten some carries in this league, I believe with Atlanta, I want to say.
I think you're right about that. Good pull.
So, but no one's a threat to take Etienne's spot or carries away from him or any vulture points. So I think Etienne is a great pull if you can get him.
You're bullish on Etienne, but you're not as bullish as I am. I have him up at number 4.
Okay.
And listen, I learned last year when we did these rankings, and I checked them at the end of the year. I think 5 of the guys that finished in the top 10 we didn't even talk about, the James Connors and the Josh Jacobs of the world. These running back rankings get skewed, so I don't think if you're
I'm
not.
glad you said that.
So it's perfectly fine, I think, to throw guys out towards the top that you may not think of it initially. Listen, you mentioned it. 1,100 yards on the ground, 5.1 yards per carry, was explosive all over the field. Would I like to see him have a little bit more of a nose for the goal line? Sure, but I think that comes with a little bit of experience and that team being a little bit better, which I think they will. I'm a little worried about Bigsby getting the ball down near the goal line.
Really?
And you mentioned he didn't catch a ton of balls last year, but he has the skill set. He has the ability to add. I think he can rig a jump from 35 catches to 50 catches.
Absolutely. Easy.
And if he finds that end zone 10 times instead of 5, we can easily get to that, top 5 potential in Travis Etienne. So I have him at number 4.
Yeah, and they're also going to be adding Calvin Ridley back to that offense this year too from his suspension. So that's going to be, teaming him up with Kirk, having Evan Ingram in there as a tight end who had a great year last year. Etienne's going to have some room to run. They're not going to be able to, put a lot in the box. They got a lot of speed, especially on the outside for Trevor Lawrence. So Etienne's going to get a lot of opportunities. So I actually. I'm cautious with the 9. I could definitely see him getting up to 4 though, where you have him.
Sounds good. So who's my number 9? And my number 9 is the guy we actually already talked about a little bit. And I mentioned I don't think the Minnesota Vikings are going to miss Dalvin Cook that much, and that's because Alexander Mattison is running the ball for Minnesota. Chris, you mentioned depth. There's really not much behind Mr. Madison. You said it earlier. And if Dalvin Cook was still on the Minnesota Vikings, where would we rank him? I think he'd probably be towards the back end of the top 10 or maybe just outside. I think Madison's better than Dalvin Cook at this point. I think Dalvin Cook has logged a lot of carries, and we've seen what that does for the legs. Madison started 4 games in 2021. He had 22 carries for 90 yards and a touchdown. He had 25 carries for 113 yards and a touchdown. And he had 26 carries for 112 yards in 3 of those games. He also had 18 catches in those 4 games. So he's shown the ability to catch the football. He has a nose for the end zone. As it looks right now, he's a 3-down back with receptions. I think he's going to be a steal. I have him at number 9. Again, on a very, very good offensive team with good receivers that are going to open up the box for him to run.
Well, like I said earlier in the show, if he takes that step, the Minnesota Vikings are going to be a decent squad. If he doesn't, not just for fantasy owners, but for his actual team, they're going to be in trouble.
I've seen enough that I think he's really good.
No, he's a nice player. I'm not a hater of Alexander Madison. I don't have him in my top 10, but I mean, I think he's a nice guy to have. I mean, I believe he'll fall somewhere in the middle. He's not going to be a stud, but at the same time, he definitely is going to give you value.
I think if you have him as your second running back, you're golden.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Who you have at number 8?
8, I had Nick Chubb.
Okay.
Nick Chubb's is a reliable guy for me from a fantasy perspective. He doesn't have Kareem Hunt to worry about behind him anymore, who, by the way, is still not in the league. He's another one that's not really talked about as much, but he is still looking for a team. Again, to my point earlier about, I mean, there's studs that are out here looking for jobs still, and teams are just not knocking down their door. It's very interesting to see how that plays out. But Chubb's always been reliable. He's a little bit better than he was before in the red zone. And there was times when I was actually a big time hater of Nick Chubb because he always seemed to get stuffed in goal line situations and things like that. Last year he did he was solid with that. So I have him as number 8. I don't think you can go wrong with Nick Chubb as one of your starting backs.
Too good one. I have him at number 7, so we're right in the same ballpark there.
Yeah.
I actually think he's one of the most talented running backs in the entire league.
Mm-hmm.
5.2 yards per carry in his career. He had a career high 12 touchdowns last year. So you said he's come around towards the goal line. Just hope that receiving game comes around a little bit more with Kareem Hunt gone. They should be theoretically a better offense with Deshaun Watson at quarterback. So I think there's going to be more opportunities for him. He's just really, really good. And unfortunately, he's one of those guys that he's just not a sexy pick. And again, I don't know if I want to take Nick Chubb with my first round pick just because he's never going to be, he doesn't have blow up potential, I wouldn't say, but he's just going to be steady. He's
I mean, he quietly had 1,500 yards on the ground last year. I mean, in this day and age, that's a lot. Any age, but I'm saying especially right now with, like you said, the age where teams have 2 and 3 headed backfields, 1,500 yards by one dude is legit.
And I'm pulling up his pro football reference right now.
And
he had 1,500 yards. The year before he had 1,300. He had 1,500 in 2019. Like the dude runs for a ton of yards, and his yards per carry every year has been over 5. Every year.
Big dude, bruiser guy. He is 27, so I think that if you are an owner, I hate saying that, but if you have Nick Chubb on your fantasy team, I think this is the year to have him. I would look to next year might be a different story. Let's say that. His 28 season, we'll see how that goes. But this year, I think will be the last year of his full peak potential. And then going forward, we may have to further evaluate him in a different ranking situation. But right now, he's definitely still a top 10 guy.
I think that's fair. Because I thought about the age a little bit.
Yeah.
As we were moving forward. So I have him at 7. You have him at 8. I'll go to my number 8 guy. I have a second-year running back. I have Kenny Walker III.
Okay.
I think he has elite talent. Mm-hmm. I think he's in a good offense. And I think most importantly, he's playing for a coach who loves to run the football. He had 6 games last year with over 20 carries. He ended up the year with 9 touchdowns, a little over 1,000 yards. He had a high ankle sprain around week 12 or week 13 that kind of hampered him for a few weeks and laid a couple of eggs, but he came on strong at the end of the regular season. I just believe in the talent. And if those wide receivers, we mentioned earlier, you have Metcalf and you have Lockett, and now you have JSN. Somebody was making fun of me for how I said it last week, so I'm not going to say it anymore. On the outside, I think there's going to be plenty of running room for Kenny Walker, and Pete Carroll likes to run the football. So I think Ken Walker's in for a solid year. I have him at number 8.
I do like Kenneth Walker. I wasn't sure about him last year when he came in the league as a rookie. I didn't know how it was going to play out with that team, that fit. Based on the fact that he had Penny at the time still and other guys, but he showed himself, proved himself. But here's the thing with Kenneth Walker. They drafted Zach Charbonnet second round this year.
Yep.
And this is back-to-back years drafting a running back in the second round for the Seahawks. So I'm wondering I think Zach's going to play a part in this offense this year. And I would not be surprised if Walker's stats actually took a hit, even if it's just the touchdown numbers, because of Charbonnet's presence on that team.
So why are you concerned about him, but yet Tank Bigsby was a 3rd-round draft pick? You weren't really worried about Tank Bigsby in Jacksonville.
I think maybe it's just the pedigree. I don't know. Charbonnet from UCLA was. I mean, I'm more. I'll be honest. I'm more familiar with the guy.
Okay.
I've seen him more. I know what he can do. Bigsby is okay, but I just think that Etienne is just way further ahead than he is. As a total package running back, I think Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker can be similar backs, and that's the difference for me. Is Charbonnet's also a big dude, runs 6'1", 220, and Kenneth Walker is like 220, 215, something like that, around 215. A little smaller, actually, at 5'9". I thought he was taller than that. They have been 5'9". So Charbonnet actually is a little bigger than Walker is. So I'm definitely concerned with goal lines for the Seahawks if I'm a Walker, a team that has Walker in their lineup. But skill-wise, I think he's a really good player. Fantasy-wise, because of that draft pick this year, I'd be a little bit concerned.
So I'm assuming you don't have him ranked.
I do not. Not in the top 10, no.
All right. So who do you have at number 7?
So for my number 7, I have Josh Jacobs. Now, this is all my rankings are assuming everybody's playing by week 1 based on their contracts and everything like that, injuries, whatever. This is all assuming everybody's healthy and active. For me, Josh Jacobs had a tremendous year last year, a total breakout. He is still young. I mean, he's only 25. It feels like he's older than that, but he's 25. He had 1,600 yards on the ground last year, 400 yards receiving with 53 receptions, 12 touch. He had a great year. I think they're going to be. The Raiders are a curious case for me. I don't know. You know, part of me says with Garoppolo there now that he's going to get even more touches. I think Derek Carr still was a little bit of a gunslinger, so it took away I think he could have had even more carries, but we'll see. They may also get Zamir White involved more a little bit this year too, being that he was a draft pick last year for them. So I think he might be ready to take a little bit of a role in that offense, but not enough to knock Jacobs out of the top 10 from where he was last year. I think he's still going to be a definite bona fide top 10 back this year in the league.
So this is going to be my Joe Mixon from last year because I don't have Josh Jacobs ranked, and the entire case you just made me regret not having him in my list. And there's something just about the Raiders franchise and the name Josh Jacobs, because to be honest, what is this, year 4 or year 5 for Josh Jacobs?
I mean, he's 25, so I'm guessing. I feel like it's his 4th year. I'd have to get that. I had to confirm that.
I'm going to pull up his numbers. Hold on 1 second here.
Yeah, I mean, either way, age 25 season is still very much in your peak prime years. And
so this is year 5 for him.
It is 5. Okay.
And again, his numbers actually in those other years are not nearly as bad as I thought. But
he's a good player.
He didn't seem to be coming out. He was supposed to be a big deal, and the first 3 years of his career just didn't seem to come to fruition, specifically in 21. He only ran for 872 yards, wasn't as productive through 54 catches. I should have him in my top 10. Me not having him in my top 10 is probably a mistake, but I'm going to stick to my list and keep him out. But
yeah, stick your guns.
As I re-look through the numbers, he should be in there for me. So that's my
I
Joe
gave
Mixon.
you.
That's
I
my Joe
gave
Mixon,
you.
and I was right about Joe Mixon.
That's what I was gonna say. And also, I gave you, something you could have used. You could have said, "Well, because of his contract, I don't know if can trust him to play a full season." You didn't use it though. That could
Yeah,
have been
no, no.
your excuse. You know what I mean?
I hear you. I hear you. So we're gonna go back to you because I have Nick Chubb at number 7, so we don't need to dive back into that.
Okay. So number 6 kind of defies a little bit what I was saying earlier with finding backs that don't have a lot of dudes behind them in the depth chart, because the backup listed back for this team, for this guy, it's actually I'm a huge fan of, and I think he's a really good player. But I have Bijan Robinson at number 6, despite the fact that Tyler Algier is now their backup. I mean, he had 1,000-yard season last year as a rookie. And the Falcons, I'm just going to be totally transparent and blunt. The Falcons are idiots. As much as I love Bijan Robinson, and I still have him 6, despite the team having Algier and Cordero Patterson still in their roster, which who knows if that'll last going into the year, if Patterson will be there or not. I don't know. He is a high candidate to be traded, I think, but we'll see. It's really a testament to how good I think Bijan is. I think he could potentially be in this league a top 2, top 3 running back. But nonetheless, there's an argument to be made about not drafting running backs in the NFL draft in the first round. All right. Now, whether you believe it or not is one thing. And then as far as a top 10 pick is a whole different argument. They drafted him at 8 with no kind of defense on that team at all. And they already had 2 solid running backs that they can still build around on their roster that were not going anywhere. I think that was a foolish draft pick. But with that being said, I believe in Bijan. I think he is a stud. I think he is going to be a premier running back. And 6 is probably going to be the lowest that he is ranked in fantasy for the next 5 years.
I have him at number 1.
There you go.
I have him at number 1. Do you know what team ran the football more than anybody else in the NFL last year?
I guess the Falcons.
The Atlanta Falcons.
And maybe
And
that's why they decided to do it. I don't
they
know.
stunk.
It's good.
And they stunk. And that means they were losing games and they were still running the football.
Yeah. But that also tells you from a football perspective why that pick was stupid.
Yes. I would agree with you. Maybe it wasn't their best pick, but
if they drafted a pass rusher and had Algier as their starting running back, they would be in a lot better position than they would if they did what they did, drafting another running back at the 8th pick.
But Chris, let's say you're sitting at home and you have that 60-inch TV and you're staring at it, you watch a lot of TV, you love TV. Say there's this new TV that comes out, 75 inches. Man, TV you got's plenty good. TV you got's plenty good. You got that dishwasher in the kitchen that's not working. You know you need to fix that. You got the air conditioner that's making that tick 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 sound. You know that's going to go soon. But you can't you keep out your eyes on that shiny prize.
Well, that's a great comparison and analogy, I should say. And I actually have had that play out in my household. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But your job is not, you as a homeowner is not going to be decided based on that decision.
I'm not sitting here saying the Falcons made the right pick. What I'm saying is you love that TV. You love that new TV.
Yeah.
And you can talk about Tyler Algier all you want. He had a nice year last year. But you ain't going back to that 60-incher. You're going to watch the 75-incher once you buy it.
Yeah, no doubt.
That guy's going to be on the field all the time.
Yeah.
If you're going to pick him at number 8, you think he's special. And I think he's going to get the ball, and I think he's special. So I have him at number 1. I think he's going to have a monster year. And part of that is also, as we go up this list, I don't think there's a clear pecking order of dominant running backs as we've seen in the past. I think it's very open as we get to the top in regards to what you want to do with some of these other running backs.
Well, yeah.
So that's why I have him at number 1 on my list.
I agree. And that goes also to say like where we're at right now as a league with this position.
Yep.
For the record, if you recall during our draft show when I said that Bijan was my number 1 target, I feel I've said 1 or 2. I think I might have had Jalen Carter still number 1, but Bijan was right there. and the Eagles were picking at 10. That pick would have been justified because the Eagles had a luxury pick. They had the ability to take a running back at 10 because of how deep and how good that team is overall. The Falcons do not have that luxury. They are far from that luxury. And they took the 75-inch TV instead of fixing the floor or the AC or the heater or whatever the situation is at the house that should have been done. It's not a sexy pick to take the offensive tackle or to take, a defensive player maybe at that pick, depending on who you're talking about. But man, I just think that might have been one of the that's not going to get them anywhere, taking him in that first round. But again, this is a fantasy segment, not an actual football segment from a personnel standpoint. So let's just leave that at that.
You should take Bijan Robinson in the first round.
Say it again.
You should be taking Bijan Robinson in the first round.
Oh, in a fantasy draft, absolutely.
Yeah,
I would feel very comfortable with that, especially if you're picking in the anywhere between 5 and 10, especially.
Yeah. So you have him at number 6. I have him at number 1. So let's go to my number 6. I have Tony Pollard of the Dallas Cowboys at number 6.
Okay.
I think he's extremely, extremely talented. We've seen glimpses of him as Eagles fans throughout the years, but as of now, it doesn't look like Zeke is coming back to Dallas. We'll have to see how that plays itself out.
He's another one looking for a job.
Yeah, absolutely. And he'll find one eventually. Again, we talk about some of these teams that need backup running backs. That's where, these guys will find jobs late as training camp goes on. Tony Pollard, over 5 yards per carry. 12 touchdowns last year for Tony Pollard. You know how many touchdowns Zeke had last year?
How many you have?
12 touchdowns last year. So you're sitting at 12 touchdowns that are sitting there waiting to be taken by somebody. And I promise you, Tony Pollard may not get all of them, but he's going to get a piece of them. So I think Tony Pollard has 15 touchdown upside on a good offensive team in Dallas. He's proven nothing but to be a positive player and to be an impact player on that offense. I don't see why that would change in a little bit of a larger role. Obviously, there is some contract issues there as well, as I believe he's playing on the franchise tag or the last year of his deal. I'm not 100% sure off the top of that, but no long-term extension for him. But I'm bullish. Again, if I'm taking a running back, and this is going to be different from it's going to contradict what I just said about Bijan Robinson, but give me running backs on good teams. Give me running backs on good teams that are going to score points. So give me Tony Pollard at number 6.
So I have a lot to say about Pollard, but it might be best for the next part of this segment versus the countdown.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll hold off then for there.
Okay. So
let's go to your number 5.
So my 5 is Big Derrick Henry. He's still the guy, at least for another season. I don't think there's a threat there for him to hoard carries. The happiest guy about getting DeAndre Hopkins was probably Derrick Henry. They now have 2 legitimate receivers on that team with Treylon Burks and DeAndre Hopkins, which helps Derrick Henry tremendously. Of course, we know Tannehill's always a question mark. He can be the Tannehill from a few years ago that was close to a Super Bowl appearance, or he could be the Tannehill we've seen since, which is very pedestrian. We'll find out. But either way, Derrick Henry there's nothing pedestrian about Derrick Henry. He's still a top 5 back in this league. He's still a feared man on the field, and I'm still taking him high in fantasy leagues if I have the opportunity.
Can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I just forgot to rank Derrick Henry.
Oh, geez. Way to boost the credibility of the pod.
Listen, it's not the first time one of us has forgotten to rank somebody.
You should have just said you didn't have him in the top 10.
Well, no, I don't want to sound like a dope. I would have had him in my top 10, but I'm going to have to just go move forward with him not in it because I forgot about him.
Well, at least you're transparent. Listen, we're transparent if nothing else on this show.
Yeah, I mean, last week we forgot to rank Jared Goff, and we ended up having to put him in T3. So there's a lot going on in this pod. No, I think you mentioned. I think the Hopkins addition will help open up that offense a little bit. They had 0 vertical threats last year on that offense. So we'll see. But Derrick Henry obviously he's a good pick for your fantasy. And I have a number 5. I have a similar player in regards to. I don't have a lot to say about him. He had a down year last year. But Jonathan Taylor's still a top 5 running back in this league.
Ooh, got him at 5, huh?
Yeah, I'm not. The Colts scare me a little bit. I just mentioned that I like running backs on good
Rookie
teams.
quarterback is a running back's best friend, though.
Yeah, yes, he is. But I'm a little more bullish on the guys I have in front of him. Really talented, should bounce back, can score touchdowns, can break long runs, can catch the football. He can do it all. But last year he didn't have it last year.
They had some funky mojo last year.
Yeah,
They
the
just
Carson
didn't they
Wentz
couldn't get
mojo.
into a rhythm at all on either side of the ball. They had that epic collapse, um, against Minnesota, I believe it was.
Oh, no, Wentz wasn't there last year. Ignore
No,
that.
that was Matt Ryan last year.
Yeah.
So they just couldn't get out of their own way. I have Taylor as my number 2 still. I
Okay.
mean, I'm a huge. I mean, obviously, me from our fantasy league. I'm a big Jonathan Taylor guy. He's still number 2 for me. I don't think he's lost anything or anything like that. I think that also his situation with, again, Anthony Richardson is the quarterback. Assuming he's the starter day one, even if he's not, then it doesn't matter who. I mean, they don't have a quarterback that's going to be a gunslinger by any means, especially not early. So he's definitely going to get a lot of opportunities, I think, and that's why I have him still as a top 2 back.
Okay. Why don't you give me your number 4? Because I had ETN as my number 4.
Okay. So 4, I have now. Here's a little bit of a bust out for me. I'm gonna go out on a limb for this guy. This is my boy.
I know who you're taking.
Who was it?
Ramondre Stevenson.
Ramondre Stevenson. You right about that. I love me some Ramondre. I think that Damian Harris last year handcuffed this dude big time. And with that said, he still had 1,000 yards on the ground, and he still caught 69 catches. So he's got huge, just blow up potential for me. Now, at the end of the year, he had what was it in that game?
He ran out of juice at the end of the year.
Yeah, he did run a little bit of juice, but again, knowing mentally and everything else, and physically too, knowing you're the guy, the regiment that he's going to have going into this year, I think he's going to definitely stand out. 6 foot 230, big dude. He reminds me of Derrick Henry, but can catch the ball out the backfield. And I'm very bullish on him, always have been. I think, is going to take a huge leap this year and be a top 5 running back this year in fantasy sports.
I don't have him in the top 10, but I would probably have him just outside. I was extremely bullish. I think I have 4 fantasy teams. I think I had him on 3. I think the only one I didn't have was our dynasty league last year. So I had the benefits of having him on all my rosters except in the playoffs when he kind of let me down. Again, catches the ball out of the backfield, so in PPRs you're looking good. I worry a little bit about Bill Belichick running backs just because he kind of comes and goes as he pleases. I worry a little bit about that offense being able to generate points again, especially now they don't have Hopkins. He went to Tennessee.
Well, but they never. I mean, they never had him though. Technically, they
I know,
should have got him, but they didn't.
But they lost. Jacoby Myers is gone too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so they still lack some offensive firepower. But I like the talent in Stevenson. I would have him just outside the top 10.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I think he's last year and especially going forward. I think he was worlds better than Damian Harris. I don't get the Damian Harris thing. I never.
I'm not a Damian Harris guy.
Yeah, I don't get it. I think he's okay, but I don't think he's a premier back at all. But there's a report today that came out that Belichick might be on the hot seat. What do you think about that? On a side note.
Yeah, we can get into that at a later date. I don't know if that's necessarily the case.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't.
All right, so we have our top 3.
You want to just run down your 3 since since it's probably the same. Well, you had what's his name for 1 Bijan.
Yeah,
you know that.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see. There was a guy I have in my top 3 that we were both down on last year that proved us wrong. So I don't know if you're going to have him in your top 3 or not, or you're going to have him outside again. But I'm going to bite the bullet and say I was wrong on Austin Eckler, and I have him at number 3. Dude, Go ahead.
I don't have him on my top 10.
See, so we have some. Our lists are very different this year, so I'm curious to see. Listen, dude had 107 catches last year,
Yeah, no, he's great catching at the backfield. That's something he definitely is.
and he does one other thing really well. He has a nose for the end zone. I
Yeah,
sat here last year and told you that he was not going to be able to have the year he had the year before because he had 20 touchdowns and that wasn't sustainable. But you know how many he had last year? He had 18.
I know.
The guy finds the end zone around. He doesn't get a ton of carries, but when he's around the goal line, he finds a way to punch it in. That offense is still going to be good. I do think they're going to try and throw the ball down the field a little bit more, which may take away some of his receptions. But even if it drops from 107 down to 85 or 90, you're still getting really, really good production. He's been healthy the last couple of years, which was a knock on him earlier. I just don't see a way that you can knock him down any further based on the production from the last 2 years. 38 touchdowns the last 2 years for this guy.
Well, I will say this. I think that was the last 2 years has probably been the best you'll see of Eckler. I don't think he'll be able to get close to that anymore going forward. Not just because he's a year older, but also a couple things. One is he's another guy looking for a check. And I don't know if I hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but you never know if the game plan plays a part in keeping the ball out of his hands a little bit to keep that wallet a little thinner on his part by the organization. I don't know, possibly. Also, Isaiah Spiller is still in the system. I think they drafted him a couple years, I think 2 years back. I think he's a really good player.
Yeah, you want to trade for him in Dynasty?
I don't know about that yet, but I think that he could hoard a little bit of carries from Eckler. I don't know about in the goal line situation or not, because you don't think of Eckler as a goal line back, but like you said, he finds a way to get those carries and be productive on them. But those two things for me, his contract and Spiller, they have Josh Kelly still, they have Roundtree. They got guys that are
Those guys
decent guys.
stink.
They're
Come
all
on, those
right.
guys stink.
They don't. I think I'm a little bit higher on them than you are, but I mean, I'm not sitting here ready to think that they're starting running backs in the league, but I think that they're decent guys that can still be productive in spots. But I'm just not big on it. I'm not an Eckler fan, and he's really good, and I get it. He's very productive. I don't know what it is about him. I just can't. I don't dig it.
I think we have one name left on our list because you had Taylor at 2.
Yes.
Okay, so you have this guy at 1. I have him at 2. Correct me. It's Christian McCaffrey.
McCaffrey's my number 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's all you. The list. Your list is done at this point, right?
No, I have my
I'm
number
sorry.
3. I have my number
Okay,
3.
say you're number 3. My apologies.
I still have Saquon at number 3.
Ooh, so I don't have Saquon on my list.
Okay. Now, did you forget him too, or did you genuinely
No,
just not
no.
have him on there?
Saquon was another guy that I had in a couple leagues last year, and I thought he's another guy who I thought ran out of steam. And I don't know how you're going to sit here and talk about contract situations with Austin Eckler and not talk about it with Saquon Barkley. He had 1,300 yards last year. He had 10 touchdowns. He had a very good year, but he's always had injury issues, and he managed to get away from him last year in what was a contract year. But I'm pulling up his game log now. Like here's from week 10 on. 15 carries, 22 yards, 11 carries, 39 yards, 1 touchdown, 18 for 63 and a touchdown, 9 for 28, no touchdown, 18 for 87 and a touchdown, 14 for 84 and a touchdown, 12 for 58. Like, I just didn't see the big explosive games that I saw early in the year from him. And I don't know if he got worn out or teams started to focus more on him, but I don't see a big year coming for Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, see, I just feel like the difference between Barkley and Eckler as far as the contract thing is, again, the depth on the team at that position. The Giants don't really have much depth at that position other than Saquon. Matt Breida is still lingering around, but I mean, he's not a threat in my opinion is to steal legitimate carries. And Saquon is just a stud, man. Like I think he's really good. I think he's a guy who I just hate him on the Giants for a lot of reasons. One is obviously being an Eagle fan, not liking him on the rival team, but I just never been a big fan of him there. their O-line is still always in flux, and it's all, they drafted some guys and some panned out and some really haven't still, and that's hurt his production a little bit. Of course, he had the injury issue. But I feel like this is a year where they're going to really, he's going to push their hand and make them really make a decision on if they want to have two guys, being him and Daniel Jones, making a ton of money against their cap to keep them. And again, conspiracy theory wise, they're overpaying Daniel Jones $42 million this year. They may go with a lot of, pass first strategies in these games this year based on justifying the money, and also at the same time justifying not paying Saquon the money. We'll see, but I think that he very well could make the most out of his opportunities this year, and I believe in him to do that, to the extent of having him as a third best back fantasy wise this year in this league. I think this is the year where he really comes out and solidifies his legacy as a premier back.
Yeah, I was bullish on him last year. I had him number 3 last year when we did these rankings.
Right,
And a lot of people didn't have him in the top 10.
Yeah.
We've
come full circle now.
Yeah, I think I'm selling high. I'm selling high on my Saquon stock. All right, so we could touch on McCaffrey, but I want to get into our sleepers and busts. Listen, McCaffrey is what he is.
Yeah, he's not.
He's a great running back on a great team with a great offensive line. He played all 17 games last year. If he stays healthy, he's going to be a stud.
He's going to have a full season with the 49ers this year versus having to deal with the Panthers crap. So I'm very bullish on him.
Yeah,
and he's a guy also. By the way, age is not as important because of the fact that he is an elite pass catcher to the extent of, I would not be surprised if he converted into a slot receiver down the road to extend his career. I think he's that good from a receiver perspective. Obviously, his daddy, Ed McCaffrey, was a very good receiver in this league, so he's got the genes for it. Yep. So it's a little bit different with him versus other guys with the age conversation. So you still are going to get very good value for him for the next several years, I think, from a fantasy perspective.
Absolutely. Let's get into our sleepers and our bust. Let's do our bust quickly, because based on the conversation we had, I think both of my bust is in your top 10 and your bust is in my top 10. So
so go ahead.
I have Joe Mixon as my bust.
Okay.
I'm again a guy I had on a couple teams last year. 3.9 yards per carry, 9 touchdowns last year, but 5 in one game. He only ran for 100 yards once. I thought there were moments when Samaje Perine outplayed him. If you look at some of the analytics stats as far as tackles, broken tackles, and stuff like that, he ranked poorly in all those statistics. So on a very, very good team. So he's going to have opportunities to score touchdowns. But I wouldn't be surprised if they brought in some competition for him before training camp. And I think Joe Mixon may be one of those dudes that is just out of gas, and the well is run a little bit dry for him. So I have him as my bust. You won't see him on any of my teams this year.
Okay. I mean, again, I have Mixon as 10, so I think he's gonna have a good year, but at the same time, he's a fringe top 10 guy for me. Where would you put him at in your rankings? I mean, did you rank beyond 10 or no?
No, I didn't go. You're talking about Mixon?
Yeah.
I didn't go beyond 10, but he'll be drafted long before I'd be interested in taking him. I can tell you that.
Oh, okay. So you're right about your prediction with the bust. I have Tony Pollard as my bust. Listen, his health, I'm still concerned about the leg. And I'm a little bit concerned about him now being the guy in the spotlight. He does have another guy with a contract situation as well. Listen, I just got a weird feeling about the Cowboys this year, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's him specifically or the offense specifically, but I'm not bullish on Dallas. I feel like they're not as good as they were last year, and last year they didn't show that they were good enough, obviously, by losing to the 49ers in the playoffs. But I'm not. I get what you were saying earlier with the touchdowns that are and the touches that are going to be available as a result of Zeke not being there. I just don't know if Pollard is a number one guy. I think he's a great number two option. I think he was perfect in that role he had with them. I don't know if he's a number one. Just like Madison, I'm trying. I want to see how they play, how it plays out with these guys. I would not jump to put Pollard in the top 10. Next year, that could be different. This year, I want to still, I'm a little skeptical. I want to see it play out first before I committed to it. I would not jump the gun to take Pollard that early.
All right, that is fair. Let's go to sleepers. Why don't you start us with the sleeper and I'll close it out.
So my sleeper is a guy that I've been big on since draft night coming out of Georgia. Phillies own DeAndre Swift. I think that the Lions, as big as bullish as I am on the Lions, one flaw they had was I think that they handcuffed this kid. I do not think he was used properly. I think that this guy has huge potential. I would not be surprised if he finished as a top 10 back in fantasy this year. I thought about putting him in there, but I don't want to hear Al's mouth about the homer stuff. So I thought different, I thought better of it. But I would not be surprised still if he got in there. He can catch the ball out the backfield. He is, as his last name says, he's swifty, he's fast. I think he's faster than a lot of people realize. And I think that I guess they called themselves having him as a change of pace back for Jamal Williams at that point in time with the Lions. He's so much more than that, though. He's it wouldn't surprise me if in preseason, if Penny gets hurt or doesn't look great, it would not surprise me if they went Gainwell 2, Swift 1, and they cut Penny. I would not be surprised by that. I don't think that'll happen, but at the same time, I would not be surprised. I think Swift is going to be a stud. And of course, running behind the O-line that he's going to have, which again, we talk about Detroit's O-line, which is great. But I just don't think he was used properly in Detroit. I think the Eagles are going to find a way to utilize him properly. He's playing for his hometown team. He's got a lot to show and to play for as a result. And I think he's going to have a great year.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Fantasy Pros ranking. They currently have him ranked as the 31st ranked running back, which I do think is also a little bit low.
That's
You
very
saw
low.
Miles Sanders obviously become a top 10 fantasy running back last year in that system. It's just a matter of, well, two things, Chris. It's A, can he stay healthy?
Right. And
He's been able to do
exactly
that.
right.
And B, for whatever reason, if you watch Hard Knocks last year, it didn't seem like Deuce Staley was very big on him either. For whether it was his running style or bouncing things outside. It'll be curious if he can kind of get that stigma off him again, running behind. Again, we say a better offensive line, but we talked earlier about how good Detroit's offensive line was as well. So
yeah, I can't blame the O-line for his situation in Detroit. I don't think that was the issue. I think it was just coaching or whatever, or the injuries, whatever it was. Honestly, it could have been that he got hurt because he was a first round pick. I think he got hurt, and then Jamal was so good that they just couldn't take the job from him.
Yeah.
And it got to a situation where, I mean, for the last year and change, I've been saying free DeAndre Swift. I didn't care where he went. If he went to the Saints, I'm just making up any team. If he went anywhere else, I would have still had him in this sleeper spot. I think the guy is a really good football player. And if he can give you 15 games, I guarantee you he is a top 10 fantasy back.
And you had him in your top 10 last year. He let you down. So we'll be curious to see what happens this year. All right. So I went a little further down the list for my sleeper. I mentioned they had Swift at 31. My guy is ranked at 37. Projected to start the season in a committee, but I think he'll take the reins as the number one. I have Khalil Herbert from the Chicago Bears. Every time this kid was put in a position to play last year when David Montgomery was out, he produced.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier, I love running backs that are in, the run pass option type scenario where they can bust off big plays. Obviously, Justin Fields, we talked about him earlier, has that ability. In games where Herbert's had the workload, he's been good. 5.3 yards per carry. Again, I mentioned a committee. They brought in Dante Foreman, who has also been really kind of good the last 2 years in a limited role, but has never really shown the ability to stay healthy. And I think that even if it's outplaying Foreman or if it's Foreman getting hurt, if Herbert jumps into a role where he's a bell cow getting the ball 20 times per week, he's going to be a top end running back 2. So I'm talking like he could finish in the 15th or 16th best running back in fantasy football next year if everything breaks right for him. And again, you're looking at the guys getting drafted around him, Chris. Um, Jamal Williams in New Orleans, Samaje Perine in Denver, Algier in Atlanta, Gibson in Washington. I would take Khalil Herbert over all those guys
Oh,
without
yeah.
any doubt.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that. I like the kid too. I think that he's a good player. And he actually took a lot of points for me off the board because of being a David Montgomery guy. That Herbert took some points several times
Yeah,
last season for me. So I definitely he's nice. He's nice.
he's a good player.
Yeah.
But that'll wrap it up for the fantasy football. Let's actually really quick. I mean, we're running late here, but I'll run down my top 10 again quickly, and then you do the same, and we'll close it out. I have J.K. Dobbins at 10, Alexander Madison at 9, Ken Walker at 8, Nick Chubb at 7, Tony Pollard at 6, Jonathan Taylor at 5, Travis Etienne at 4, Austin Eckler at 3, Christian McCaffrey at 2, Bijan Robinson at 1, and Derrick Henry somewhere on the milk carton.
I had Joe Mixon at 10, Etienne at 9, Nick Chubb at 8, Josh Jacobs 7, Bijan Robinson at 6, Derrick Henry at 5, Ramondre Stevenson at 4, Saquon Barkley at 3, Jonathan Taylor 2, and Christian McCaffrey at 1.
And for my sleepers, I have Khalil Herbert, and my bust, I have Joe Mixon. Chris's bust is Tony Pollard, and his sleeper is DeAndre Swift.
Also, want to add real quick an honorable mention for sleeper. I like Cam Akers this year a lot too.
I had him at number 3 last year. Remember, and he just but I like him too.
He's healthy this year. I think he'll be okay. I think really good actually. I think really good.
We will continue our football previews as we go into further episodes. Well, you maybe put up a poll on Twitter this week in regards to what you want to see next as far as a division for us to do. We're going to save the NFC East for the last, but give you guys the option of what you want to see next. So, anything else before we close it out?
I'm just happy that we're talking about football again. Looking forward to the next few weeks. And Al, get well soon, bro. Got to get you back on here with us. It's not complete without you. So looking forward to hopefully getting them back for next week.
Yeah, but no YouTube this week as I had some camera issues. So you won't see it on YouTube, but we'll be back next week. And until then, we're going to drop that beat.